I threatened to shoot him over message. I fully intended to. My whole world collapsed within the space of 7 days. We had the armed division of Merseyside police turn up at the gym. 8 or 9 officers from the armed division. Anyway, 2 days later, Jersey police raided my house, arrested me. That was the best thing that could have possibly happened to me at that time.
Why?
Because if I hadn't have been arrested, I'd have been dead.
You're a multi-millionaire gym owner. You were born on a council estate in Merseyside, left school at 13, became a free runner performing for brands like Red Bull and Adidas, became a junior bodybuilder, then became an international drug smuggler. You've spent time in prison, you've been involved with firearms, and now you're out.
It's about as exciting as it gets, I'm afraid. Something that became apparent to me when I was in prison, that it doesn't matter how big or how gangster you are, that if somebody who's willing to do nasty things to you for a very small amount of money, you're coming out worse than you went in, guaranteed.
What's it like being on trend?
I'd taken it in recent years, and within one injection, within like 2 days, I'm ready to kill someone now. You feel like a superhero. You feel completely invincible. And I come back behind the courtroom to see my advocate. He said, in the 30, 40 years I've done this is alien to me. He's like, you've upset somebody somewhere way above my pay grade.
Who did you upset? Nicholas Wickham, welcome to the next generation.
Thank you for having me, my man.
You're a multi-millionaire gym owner. You were born on a council estate in Merseyside, left school at 13, became a free runner flying around the world business class performing for brands like Red Bull and Adidas, became a junior bodybuilder, then became an international drug smuggler. You've spent time in prison, you've been involved with firearms, and now you're out and you're absolutely crushing it. There's so much to get into. I want us to start here. What is a memory from your childhood that you seem to find yourself returning to more often than others?
I would say a certain memory I have from my mid to late teens as kind of a turning point for me in life, from a path that I was on to a substantially better path that I ended up on. And this would have been 17 years of age. Things had taken a darker turn than they had in the years previous. My attitude towards life, the way that I handled myself, the way that I treated other people had declined significantly. I'd become a bit of a bully, I'd say. I was very depressed, hated myself, hated the world. And I had a friend, his name is Daniel Ilabaka. He was, during our youth and during our time in the free running scene, he was the best in the world. He was number one, and he happened to live a few streets away from where I lived. He was a religious man, which I'm not myself. I'm an atheist. But he was a good man, and the morals that he'd taken out of his Christian background were better than anything I'd ever been taught in the absence of having any actual family background. And we were good friends, and I admired him a lot, and I had no real father figure. I had nobody in authority who I looked up towards, and I didn't really have any authority in my life. No father figure. So he was pretty much the only person at that time in my life who I could look at and say, I respect you. And I remember having a conversation with him on MSN at the time, long before your time.
Yeah. And
I was explaining my feelings to Daniel, and I said, I'm in a really bad place. I know I'm in a bad place, and it was affecting my training as well. So I wasn't performing as well. Like, everything was just wrong. And it's very rare I confide in anybody. And I confided in Daniel that night, and I said, look, these are the issues. He said, Nick, I don't want to do this on MSN. He said, let's meet up. He said, let's do it now. I said, okay. He said, meet me on top of, there's a certain set of buildings that we live near. He's like, meet me on top of there. We used to do this quite frequently, meet late at night. And I met him at the top of these buildings in our local town of Morton. And we climbed up to the very top, and we've got to look down over the town and over the city in the background. It was just beautifully quiet. And that's why we used to go out late at night, because obviously the world had stopped. And once you get high up and you look down on society, like, everything is just calm. You get a whole different perspective of everything and everybody. And anybody that you do see, they're not aware that you're watching them. So you just get this really kind of disconnected, but at the same time, far more connected view of society. So we were in a good setting. And I said to Daniel, I said, man, I just don't know what to do. I'm in such a hole. And, I explain my feelings to him, and he looks at me and he says, Nick, I want you to do something for me. And in the years leading up to this, Daniel was as I say, he was religious, but he was very passionate about that religion, and he'd try and bring as many people into the same belief as possible. Not in a forceful way, but he was very encouraging. He liked to preach a lot, and I was like, Dan, don't waste your fucking time, man. We've done this 100 times. I know where this is going. I'm not coming to church. We're not. And he's like, no, Nick. He's like, just trust me. He's like, I want you to just try something for me. And I says, go on, I'll let you speak. Because I kept cutting him off, and he kept cutting me out. I was like, go on, speak. He's a couple of years older than me. And he says, Nick, I want you to try and just be nice to people. I says, what do you mean, Dan? He says, I want you to go out your way to be kind and decent to everybody, regardless of how they approach you, whether you know them or not, what your relationships are. He said, I just want you to try this out. He said, for the next few weeks, I just want you to be nice to everybody that you meet and just see what happens. And I give him a funny look again, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, man. He's like, for me, please, just try this out and see what happens. And I said, you know what? Fine. And purely for the respect that I had as him, as an athlete, I wouldn't have taken that advice from anyone else. I was like, you know what? It sounds fucking ridiculous, but let's give it a go. And for the weeks that followed, I went out of my way to be overly nice to everybody. I went out my way, see a stranger in the street struggling, I'd help them. I see someone I'm just walking past, I'd say a kind word. And I mean, sure, I'm leaving room for coincidence here, but from that point onward, and for the 3 or 4 years that followed, they were the most positive, productive, and opportunity-packed years in my life, because the more people that I was being kind to and taking my time to go above and beyond, they want to spend more time around me. And then the more people that want to spend time around you, they want to introduce you into more people. And the more people that you get to know, the more opportunities come up. And everything in my life went from being absolutely awful, I had nothing to look forward to, I hated everything, to just making that small change of what my output was. And it made a huge difference to me. And I was able to ride that wave for 3-4 years. And that was the apex of my parkour career. That's when we were getting like huge companies taking us on for work. Everything was just super positive. And it wasn't until I'd got injured further down the line, a few years down, that I kind of lost that approach to life. But that window that I had in taking Daniel's advice and just applying that to the world, that changed my life massively. And I very much try and incorporate that in everything that I do today. But I'd say, I mean, there's been a lot of profound moments when I was younger, a lot of them negative, that I've gone in certain ways, but the effects that had on my life has been the foundation that I built the rest of my life on. So in terms of the impact that any one moment has had, that's been the most profound, it would definitely be that moment.
What do you think would have happened if you didn't meet Daniel? I
think what went on to happen would have happened a lot earlier. I think I'd have ended up in prison at a much younger age. I mean, it was my 23rd birthday when I eventually landed in prison, but I was on a very, very negative path when I was a lot younger.
Talk to me about that.
I had no outlet. So I was born to a very young mother. So my mother got pregnant at 15. So she had me at 16, and my dad left when I was about 2 years old. So it was me and mum for all of our, for all of my youth. And we lived we had a downstairs flat. And obviously with the age difference between me and my mum, she didn't have time to grow up. She wasn't an adult. The relationship that her and I had up until the day she died was the same. It was more of a brother-sister bond than it was mother and child, because she'd never, as I say, she'd never had an opportunity to become an adult herself, let alone have the skills to become a parent. And as much as viewing it black and white, she was a god-awful parent. I'd have done no better in that situation. So it's never something I've ever held against her. But that led on to me having a lot of troubles as a kid. I didn't fit in school. Obviously, I later got a ADHD and ASD diagnosis, but I didn't fit in conventional schooling at all. I never did, even from a very young age. And where we were living at the time, like, my mum had let me stay out till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night when I was like 7 years old. Like, I was hanging around with people who were older. I was just climbing in the woods, getting up to mischief. It was around the same period of my life where I was sexually abused for about 12 months. I'd have been about 8 years old at the time. My mum was completely unaware of that for the 12 months that it went on for, because she lived in her own bubble. She didn't work, slept a lot, heavily overweight. Like, just don't think she enjoyed life at all. But she left me to my own devices, which has been one of the greatest points of my entire life. But it also meant I went through a lot of difficult experiences that you wouldn't ordinarily go through in a standard family setup. And when we left the area that we were living in, It would have been the year 2000. That'd have been 9 going on 10, maybe 10. And we moved out of that area, and that's when my behavior really started to decline in school. School didn't want me there. I was too violent to stay on the premises. And I got arrested at age 12 for GBH. I got into a altercation with another lad of similar age, and we had a fight, and he lost his front 3 or 4 teeth. So it was my first arrest, and I was in court for that. And this I'd been about 12 years old, my first time in court. And that was the path that I was on. Like, that wasn't unusual for me. It was unusual to have been arrested, but that, like, the violence that was around in and around my life at the time, and general disregard for any rules, that was the common theme. And while I was in court, the school separated me. They put me into a porter cabin at the side of the school, had cages on the windows, spiked fence around it, like completely isolated. And the school didn't really know what to do with me. And it was around that same time that I just happened to meet Daniel for the very first time. And from the background that I'd come from up until that point, no father figure, no male role model in my life to take any type of guidance from, or any type of inspiration, any motivation. And seeing Daniel and the way that he moved and the way that he conducted himself was fascinating. It was inspiring. This guy can move. He's just genetically a machine. Like, any sport that you put him, you give him an hour, and he'll be a good level. Like, he's just genetically gifted in every way. And when I first met Daniel, it was still very much parkour, free running. We didn't really have a name for it at the time. It was still very much in its infancy. And at the time, it served as a perfect channel for the way that I was behaving, because we could just get chased by the police. We could climb on top of rooftops, and we could cause issues, wait for the police to get called deliberately so we could just get chased by the police. Because we knew the terrain that well, and we were that quick and that fit, they would never catch us. So we'd have police coming after us in like 5, 6, 7 car convoys, horses, helicopters. Like, we'd done it all, and they'd never catch us because we know exactly where to go. And it was good fun, but it was just mischievous fun at the time. And the more time I spent around Daniel, the more his moral fabric wore off on me as a person, because he's just, those type of people. And again, like, I'm not even 1% religious. But as I say, the moral foundation in which his Christian family had built what they had was beautiful. You couldn't fault it. You really couldn't fault it. It was just good people who wanted to just put good out. And I stopped going to school, and the school didn't really pursue me. It's not like it is today where they're sending fines left, right, and center. They just kind of left me to it. And eventually the school gave me a calendar, and my calendar was a Monday I was due to be in school in the segregation unit. And then Tuesday to Friday, I was free running with friends. That was literally written on my school calendar. They were like, look, he's found an outlet, let him pursue it. And it took me away from the violence and the anti-authority like theme that I had in my life at the time. So I've got something to really focus on now. But it was still very much casual until 2004. Which is the first time I flew to France. So I went over to France on my own at 14. My mum didn't know. She didn't realise I'd gone until I'd come back. But I managed to get a friend who was driving down to London. I managed to jump in his car, got me to London. I got another friend to help me onto the Eurostar to get over to Paris. And the reason I did that is because the birthplace of parkour is in a little town south of Paris. It's called Nice. And I'd spoken to a guy from North Carolina on the internet on a forum, and agreed to meet him in this town in the middle of nowhere in France, this fully grown man. So I met him, and he was of similar fabric. Like, the parkour scene seemed to pull people together from a specific mindset. There was a lot of neurodivergence in there. There's a lot of people that come from like sort of not the cool kids in school. There was a lot of quirky people there, and I like quirky people. I like interesting people.
Well, what do you think it was specifically about parkour that you latched onto? Because it seems like it's a normal thing to pursue when you have a troubled youth, is some sort of outlet. And usually that would come in the form of getting convicted like you did, and then going down that path without finding a sport or a hobby to replace it. And there's also this male dimension as well, where you're not only pursuing a distraction from what's troubling at home, you're also seeking status to compensate for it. Was there something in that with parkour? What was it that really got you into it?
I'd say what got me into it was mostly the mischievous side of things initially. That's what caught my interest. You're playing cat and mouse with the police. That was the initial intrigue. And then when I got into it, and the more that evolved, it was very much an escape for me in terms of it took me away from home. I'd found a community of people for the first time who had everyone had a similar interest. But it engaged me in a way where I could engage my physical as well as my mental. So, and it's very similar to the rock climbing scene in that, we call things problems, like a particular line, a jump, a climb. We'd refer to that as a problem. And obviously you have to work out to solve it. And that requires more than just your body, it requires your mind as well. And it kept me hyper engaged. And I have an issue with my attention span, and anything that just requires my mental focus but no physical focus, I can't stay interested in, and vice versa. Anything that just requires my physical attention but it's not mentally engaging, i.e. weightlifting, I just can't stay engaged. Whereas parkour was everything. I had the mental engagement, the physical engagement. I also had the mischievous nature, which kind of fitted the way that I was at the time anyway. But I also had the adrenaline fix. There was a big risk. Risks, obviously, it's been a recurring theme in my life that I have a big appetite for risk. But it was a risk that didn't knock onto anybody else's, it wasn't going to impact on anybody else. The risk that I was taking was personal to me. And it really filled that void, and it taught me a sense of discipline that I'd never been able to acquire at home or in school or any other aspect of my life. I'd never had any sense of discipline. And when I got to France, just by chance, the town, as I say, we went to the birthplace of parkour with this American guy, quite a few years older than me. We happened to bump into the founders of parkour, the guys who, the origin of the entire sport, the Yamakasi, they're called. They're a team out there. And they took a lot of inspiration from, military training. They used to do a lot of drills, a lot of strength and conditioning, a lot of mental endurance type stuff. Like they'd spend 3 days training without shoes and socks just to understand what it felt like to just be really raw. And when we met with them guys, this was the period in my life where parkour was just mischievous, and it was just an outlet to fuck around. When we met these guys in Nice, I thought, right, we're just going to go and climb. We're just going to go and fuck around. We're going to jump off this, do that. Nope. We spent 2 days doing drills in a park of bodyweight lunges, carrying each other, learning to pull each other up walls, like proper team building stuff. And for the week that I spent there, it completely changed my mentality and my understanding of what parkour was and what it could be. And I come home just after the 7 days that I'd spent there. I come home a completely different person, and that was it. Then that was I'm going to dial the fuck in. And I'd have been 14-ish. And then I rode that wave for a couple of years, and incorporated that discipline into a lot of my training, and I become very, very, very talented at parkour. And the team that I went on to create, we had one of the best teams in the entire world. And there's only two chapters in there where I lost my positivity, where I lost my discipline, and that was both through injury. And both times I fell more towards the individual that I was before I found parkour. And I think that was always the path that I was destined to go on. I was either destined to be shot dead or destined to be in jail. That was it. And if I don't find a positive outlet, then I very quickly slip back into that negative mindset. So if I hadn't have met Daniel, to go back to your question, I think I'd have gone to prison much, much sooner than I did. I don't think I'd have learned the lessons that I did from being part of the parkour community, because it was very different to the fitness of the bodybuilding world, wherein there's no man-to-man competition. There's not, I want to be better than you, you want to be better than me, you did this better than I did, and I did that better than you did. There's none of that. There's, I want you to be better, so we are better together. I want you to be 1% better today, and I'm going to try and get 1% better today, and we're going to grow together. And having coming to the fitness scene a lot later on, there's a lot more ego and there's a lot more, I want to be better than you, I want to be bigger than you, I want to be leaner than you, I want to be stronger than you. There's nowhere near, I mean, there is obviously in certain aspects of the industry, but parkour was all about everybody gets better. And if somebody does something new or achieves something, everybody who was there will clap because everyone's happy that you've got better, because there was no room for, oh, he's better than he is. There was none of that whatsoever. You know, the camaraderie that I experienced in there and knowing what it feels like to have that support where there's no particular benefit for the individual to share that camaraderie with you. Like there's no financial benefit to them. It is literally just, I fucking back you. I've got you no matter what. That feeling when you have that with somebody, and even more so when you have that with a set of people, is, you know, it is 100x more powerful than anything else I've experienced in life. And it's like the example I use is like during the time, just before we started to get like the big commercial work, we didn't have any money at all. We had nothing, to the point where like the trainers that we were wearing for parkour, they're called Kalenjis. You used to be able to buy them in Decathlon for £9. And we used to band money together, like £1.50 each, to get somebody to drive us to a place called Stockport, about 50 minutes away from where we live, where they sell the Kalenjis in Decathlon. And we go in our old trainers and we take a new pair off the shelf, put them on, put the old pair on the shelf, and we'd steal everything we needed, and we were quite literally stealing from the bins at the back of Tesco to eat, because nobody had any money at all and nobody was working. And they were the happiest years of my life. They were the happiest years of my life. And there was a group of I'd say maybe 25 of us. A couple of them had dropped out of school. Most of them were older, so they weren't in school and they weren't kind of at that age yet where you're kind of obligated to get a job. You know, we're sort of like late teens. And there was about 25 of us, and we'd meet up almost every day and we just train all day, and we just, and we're talking a group of kids. We'd be like talking philosophy, like talking technology. Like we just loved conversation and we loved being together, and we didn't have anything. And that to this day now, that is the chapter of my life that I love the most. That was when I felt the most complete, when I had the most happiness, and I had nothing. And I've said it publicly a few times, like if I could give up everything that I have now, the businesses, the fancy cars, the money, everything, to go back to that period and stay locked in that forever, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And that tells me that it isn't the things, and it sounds somewhat cliche, it's not the things that I have in my life that make it good. It's the people that I have around me.
One of the biggest lies sold to our generation that we've just accepted is that phone addiction is simply a self-control problem. I don't think that's true anymore. If you put an ordinary person against teams of behavioral psychologists, machine learning engineers, and trillion-dollar companies optimizing for attention, of course they're going to lose. The answer isn't feeling guilty. The answer is changing the environment. That's why I've been trying Shift. Unlike almost every blocker I've used before, Shift puts the control somewhere I can't instantly override from my phone, which means when my future self inevitably tries to negotiate with himself, he can't. I still have all the useful parts of my phone. I can still work, travel, and communicate. I've just removed the things that quietly consume hours of my life. If attention is the foundation of a meaningful life, protecting it is probably one of the highest return investments you can make. Shift gives you lifetime access with one payment. No subscriptions, no hidden fees. You can get 20% off through my link. So go to shiftyourphone.com or click the link in the show notes to try it for yourself. That's shiftyourphone.com. So you make this change in the way you show up, and everything starts going well. You start getting flown across the world business class, representing brands like Adidas and Red Bull. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was a crazy chapter in our life for the whole team, because we were all of similar age. I want to say mid-teens again. And this is when parkour was just coming to the media. So it only just started being talked about. It was new, it was hot, it was sexy. And we were one of only 2 teams in the UK that actually practiced. And I slapped a very low quality website together for us, mid 2000s. It's been about 2007, whenever sort of the first iteration of YouTube come out. We had, what were we using at the time? Like Mega Upload and something else, like ancient platforms to today's standard. But around the first iteration of YouTube, we put our first videos up, and we had the website. And Puma got in touch, and they said, "Oh, we really want you guys to shoot some bets." And they assumed that we were far more professional than we were, because we were literally just kids. And I'm going back and forth on these emails, pretending to know, to understand half of the words that they're using. in terms of like the business conversations they were trying to have. And they sent us a load of product, and I'm talking like thousands and thousands of pounds worth of product. And we convinced a local hobby photographer who said, look, well, we haven't got any money to pay you, but we'll give you like some of these clothes they've sent us for free if you'll come and take some photos and some videos of us wearing it. And he agreed. And we did this shoot for Puma, sent back the bits, and obviously we put that onto our website, we put it onto YouTube, and that was the first, that was the catalyst. And they absolutely loved it. From there, things just absolutely catapulted. The news got their teeth into us. So we had multiple like news articles, you know, all singing our praises. We got big sponsors come in, as you said. We got our work with Adidas. We'd done some music videos, some TV adverts. Work with the National Lottery. Some of the guys on the team did some bits with MTV. And just towards like the end of our tenure, some of the guys on our squad were in the last Harry Potter movie. And like, you know, we for a group of teenagers who were absolutely winging it, we smashed it, and we got to travel the world together as that original squad, that OG squad, who'd just been bunking off school, and now we're getting flown all over the place, staying in nice hotels, you know, getting paid a good chunk of money as well. But we got to do it together. So we were basically traveling all over the place. We get given these big expenses budgets for like the UK stuff, like nice hotels and whatever else. And there's some jobs where we've literally just jumped on a National Express coach for a tenner to make the extra money, and then just slept in sleeping bags on a roof nearby on the set. Like we roughed it, but that's what we've been doing for years. So we didn't care. So, you know, we were all over the place, man. You could see, like, you're on TV, we were getting sent tons of clothes left, right and center. Like I had the spare bedroom in my mum's house was packed from floor to ceiling with just free clothes, Converse, Adidas, Puma, all of it. We just couldn't give it away. We had that much of it. We couldn't give it away. And this is the same group of lads who were shoplifting £9 trainers like 18 months previous. But most importantly, we got to travel the world, and we got to meet so many different people from so many different cultures. And we had a forum that we were using on the internet at the time called Free Run. And it's basically where the whole community was. So you had people who were practicing parkour and free running all over the world just on this one forum. And we got to meet people from all over the world. Because remember, if we were on a job in, say, Spain, we'd be like, okay, well, who lives nearby? And we'd fly out to these different countries, and the turnout for us, because we were one of the best teams in the world, you'd have like 50, 60, 70 locals there waiting for us the minute we get there. Like, wait, do you want to stay with us? Oh, my mum's prepared dinner, because they were still mid to late teenagers.
Yeah.
And we traveled the world, and we slept in some crazy places, slept on trampolines in Denmark overnight, like with some guy who put us up, and his mum would let us stay in the garden and made a barbecue for us. Like we've been all over the world. We performed for MIT in Mumbai. That was a really cool experience. But we got exposed to all these different cultures, races, religions that we didn't get back home. And early 2000s, late 90s, on my council estate especially, like it was all white. There was no other religions, there was no other races, there was nothing. There was just, that is it. So all you knew was what you seen on the news, and that was it. So to be exposed to all these different cultures, different foods, different ways of thinking, like it was empowering, and it was, you know, it was an opportunity to see the world and understand the world more than anybody that I'd grown up with has ever had opportunity to do. I'd say even to this day, they just see the rhetoric that's on the news, and that's it. That place is evil. But I've been everywhere, man. I've met everybody from every walk of life that you can imagine, and there are good people everywhere, and there are bad people everywhere. And that was one of the richest periods of my life. And I don't mean financially, just being able to share so much time with so many other people, like real time. Obviously, we connect with people all over the world on social media now, but you're only ever going to be so much connected through a screen. To know that you landed in another country and there's somebody that you only know on the internet via their username and a few posts that they've made, and you're now going to go and stay at their house. So you're in an intimate space immediately, like you're on top of each other, but you got to ask questions then. You already know most about me before we even had this conversation today, and I already know a fuck ton about you because we can read. You can do your due diligence on me, I can do it on you. Mutual friends. Whereas that was just, you're out into the open. This is it. Now go and learn. And that was a beautiful chapter of my life, man. And it wasn't until I got severely injured that things started to really take a turn for the worst.
In the space of 5 years, I've had the chance to meet Joe Rogan in his podcast studio. I've gone from being a fanboy of Chris Williamson to hanging out with him for dinner and in his new podcast studio. I built up the Trigonometry podcast from 300,000 subscribers to 1 million, going on multiple tours to America with them. It's pretty surreal looking back at all the knowledge I've been fortunate enough to have imparted on myself, and it feels wrong to just gatekeep that for myself. But luckily for you, whether you're an aspiring podcaster who's done 0 episodes or someone who's done hundreds and can't quite seem to crack the code to make it work, I've got something just for you. I've gone into a partnership with my best mate and fellow podcaster Chris Griffin to create Pod Pro, the best podcast school in the world. Since meeting last year in Austin through a mutual friend, we've slept in cars together, we've built productions in LA warehouses, and we've climbed mountains and placed a full cinema production on top of it. The mentorship includes live weekly calls with both Chris and myself, access to our team for direct client success meetings, as well as different modules we've put together with the actual frameworks we use for everything in the podcast space. This is designed to take you from A to Z and for you to have a comprehensive understanding of it all. I genuinely can't imagine a better podcast offer in the world from any other podcasters in the space. And that might sound egotistical, but I don't think there's someone who's actively walking the walk while still being aware of every part of the process, being in the trenches at a level as high as Chris and I. So to apply, go to thepodpro.com/Elliot or click the link in the description, put in your details, and my team will be in touch. That's thepodpro.com/Elliot.
I damaged my knee quite seriously. My patella in my right leg was screwed, just taking too much high impact, because we were taking high impact, like we're doing roof jumps all the time, like from one huge multi-story building to another, like really, really heavy impact. And we didn't really do as much conditioning as we should have. So I agreed to take a year off training and just manage the team in the background. And I thought, I'll join a local gym and just try and, give myself the best chances of coming back as soon as possible. So I joined a local gym, training at the local gym, and I'd already started to feel disconnected from the parkour scene. Yes, I was still managing the team. Yes, I was still socially engaging, and I was still going to the training sessions just to kind of like hang out, but it just wasn't the same. And after I'd been training at this gym for a couple of months, I started to put weight on really quickly, like good weight. Like I responded really well. Like genetically, I just have the base that's primed to develop. I had a guy approach me in the gym. This must have been about 2 or 3 months in, and he's like, "You look fucking awesome, kid." He's like, "Are you competing?" I said, "What do you mean competing?" He's like, "Bodybuilding, like you're going to compete?" I said, "You mean like Arnold Schwarzenegger?" Like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, you've got great potential. He's like, "Look at you, you look fantastic." And he shows me some pictures on the wall. He's one of them like die-hard bodybuilding types. He's like, you should compete. You're still a junior, you should compete. And over the months that followed, he kind of took me under his wing, and it very quickly evolved to, okay, well, if you want to compete, you need to take steroids. You're wasting your time if you do not. So then I started taking steroids. I've been 19-ish. And again, responded really well, ballooned up. But I was getting, the distance from the parkour scene was becoming more and more as I was leaning into this bodybuilding scene. And I entered the Junior Nationals 2012. I won that show. So I won Junior Mr. Britain. That was my first show. And I'd only been training maybe 10 months at that time. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd get annihilated to today's standard. But bodybuilding was very niche back then, so you didn't see anywhere near the level of competition that you do now. But I won my title, Junior Mr. Britain, 21 years of age. Getting a lot of attention at this point now. I'm in like bodybuilding magazines, and it started to play with my mind a lot. I'm already putting a lot of synthetic hormones into my body, on top of being at an age where things are chaotic as they are anyway. Add to that all of the attention that I'm getting for now being Junior Mr. Britain and being in a space that is very much focused on image and power and ego. And it started to consume me very quickly, much quicker than I like to admit. And it took me from the high point in my life where everything was community focused, everything was positive, to a completely different mindset of, I just want to be the best. I just want to be the best. I want to be the biggest. I want to be the strongest. I want to have the most amount of money. I just want to be that fucking guy, man. And they are two entirely different worlds. Coming from this community group where we just go out and litter pick just because, like that's the kind of level we were on as a parkour community. So what should we do today? Well, let's litter pick the local town, just off our own back. To go from that to, I just want big cars, and I want big arms, and I just want to be strong, and I want to intimidate people, and I want to walk around like this with swagger, and it changed me completely. And now I'm getting all this attention in the bodybuilding scene. A lot of people are asking me, "Oh, how do you look like that? Oh, you're taking steroids. Where'd you get the steroids from?" So then I thought, well, maybe I can start just adding a little bit of money onto the steroids that I'm buying, and I'll cover my own usage. And that escalated so fast from, I'll just sell a few bottles to cover my own usage to, right, okay, well, now I'm importing and exporting steroids all around the world to all these people on bodybuilding.com, to people locally. And then the more of an appetite I got for it, the more I'm reaching out to friends across Europe who I knew from the parkour days, being like, do you know when I'd be interested in X, Y, and Z?
Well, take me through, what was it like? What did it feel like first getting your hands on steroids, using them, seeing the results, and progressing up to eventually asking anyone and everyone if they need some?
Very addictive. Very, very addictive. And it was new to me, as I say. I'd not been exposed to that kind of receiving dopamine in that way. I'd never really experienced it before. It was very new to me. And as I say, like the amount of hormones that I was taking at the time, I mean, it's very different in today's world. There's a lot of literature available so you can safely do if that's what you choose to do. Whereas back then it was very much take this and take loads of it. Big Dave in the gym says you need to take this as well, and this and this and this, and you take it all. So the amount of hormones that I was putting into my body was terrifying. So I had an altered mind state anyway. But like the dopamine fixes that I was getting from growing so quickly was absolutely wild, man. And it seemed like making the money come quick and easy. And that was exciting. I was getting a good fix from that and the training because my body was responding so well. I was getting that fix. It was just cheap dopamine, left, right, and center. Cheap dopamine, cheap dopamine, cheap dopamine. Where, again, I'm used to prolonged dopamine coming from the parkour scene where it would take you 18 months, 2 years to master a certain problem. So I'm used to that delayed dopamine response. But that's what I enjoyed because of how satisfying it was at the end of it. Oh, I finally got it. And now in this new dynamic where my body's changing every day. So I'm taking that many hormones. I'll wake up in the morning and be like, well, I wasn't there yesterday. Well, this vein looks new. Like, it's that instant gratification over and over again, both financially, physically. And it was so addictive. And I went so deep down that hole. And to go from just exchanging a couple of bottles of steroids to the wholesale level of import and export that I was doing, like that happened in the space of like 2.5, 3 months. We're not talking like a prolonged period of time. Like this went from nothing to a lot fast. And that escalated even quicker when I had somebody contact me who I'd been selling steroids to, who pitched the idea to me of, you ever thought about selling anything else? I said, like what? He said, have you heard of MCAT? I was like, no, I haven't. So I was like, what's that? He said, methadone. And it's a class B drug, so I can get it really cheap. In the weeks that followed, I ended up buying a ton of methadone to sell through this other guy, which we did. And we started making a lot of money fast because we were making a lot more out of what we had because we were watering everything down. We were buying bottles and bottles of table salt from Tesco and mixing it with the methadone, which is like a crystallized, like salt looking compound.
Like a Scouse Walter White.
We're probably far less technical capability, I'm sure. But yeah, we were mixing 1 into 3, selling that on and making tens of thousands off effectively Tesco table salt because we were getting it at source. It was really, really high quality. So we were making a lot of money fast. And that's when I started to like really, really lose my personality. And I started to get a fixation on like gangster movies, gangster series, Sopranos, The Godfather, like a lot of influence. Always like rap music, but now it was starting to feel a lot more real. Everything that's getting rapped about, and I'm like, yeah, like I really got into character.
What was it that made you go down that rabbit hole? What was the key point there? Was it the fact that you were dosed up on steroids and that contributed to the aggression? Was it that you finally felt like you had this show of status and you wanted to rise to the top? What was it?
I'd say status. Like I'd become the guy at this point. And I'd been the guy previously because we'd had so much like media coverage with the parkour, and we were the guys there, but it was an entirely different feeling of being feared versus being admired is a very different experience. And if you don't have the maturity to process that, it can feel far more rewarding, even though it certainly is not. And I lost my way and I become so addicted to it, but you become surrounded by people who are there for the ride, but certainly don't disclose that. You think you're the man and you're in an echo chamber of, yeah, you are the man, because you're paying, like at the time when I was doing this, well, I lent in hard on the violence side of things. And I'd say it was primarily due to the type of steroids that I was taking at the time. I was taking a particular steroid called Trenbolone. And it is the harshest steroid on the body and on the brain.
Well, I'm curious. I want to hear about this. What's it like being on Tren?
You feel like a superhero. You feel completely invincible. Like completely invincible. And obviously the experience varies from person to person. In my experience, and I obviously know a lot of people who've taken steroids, I'd say for most people, it turns you into a dick, but you feel fucking invincible. Like you just want to fight. Like you just want somebody to hit you in the face. Like it's a wild experience, and it's very potent. I think gram for gram, it's like 7 times more androgenic than testosterone. Like more testosterone. Like it's not good. And I forget through which exact mechanism it works in the brain, but it essentially prohibits your ability to produce dopamine and serotonin. So you really struggle to feel good. So common side effects include like severe paranoia, anxiety, insomnia, night terrors, bed sweats, like rage out of nowhere. But because the physical results are so substantial that it's very commonly used. Now, because you can't sleep, because you can't feel happy, you're just fucking angry all the time, which is great if you're training because you've just got all of this energy just to utilize through that outlet. But then what do you do for the other 16 hours of the day that you're awake and you're feeling this way? And it made me very violent, and it made me get to the point where I want someone not to pay a bill just so we can go and handle it, just because you've just got all this tension built up that you want to use. And I'd taken it in recent years, truth be told, not in the last few years, but I'd taken it since then, despite what it'd done to my life, thinking, no, I'm in a good place now. I maybe have a different experience. I'm talking like 2018, 2019. And within one injection, within like 2 days, I'm like, I'm ready to kill someone now. Like I can't do this. It was convenient for me to say, oh, that was a wild time in my life. That's probably why I had X, Y, and Z impact. But no, it's an evil drug, man. So, I got very violent, and that was around the time that I got involved with firearms for the very first time. And one of my friends at the time, we'd had a fallout, quite a nasty fallout, and I threatened to shoot him over message. And I fully intended to. Dumbest thought process I probably ever had. And I went to his house. I literally texted him when I was outside. I was like, I'm sat outside your house. I'm going to shoot you. Like that's how invincible you feel. It's like, well, no one's going to stop me. Police aren't going to stop me. You just feel absolutely invincible. And I sat outside his house and waited. Why? For even a second, I thought he's going to walk out. Like I've just told you what I intend to do. Like, but that's how arrogant you become or can become. And obviously he didn't come outside, and I went back home, and I put the thing away, shall I say, somewhere else. And later that night, the police attended my premises. So we've had a call from such and such. He said, you threatened to shoot him and he's aware that you do have a firearm. I said, don't know what you're talking about, officer. And then they had a look around the house, had a mooch. And they were like, okay, no issues. We'll report back. We'll be in touch. And they left. And the next day I got raided. and they ripped my house to bits, ripped the oven to pieces, took everything down, like literally to shreds. Like I had a Range Rover at the time, took the Range Rover down to pieces, dusted it for fingerprints. They only found, I think, a couple of kilo of methadone in the house that I'd forgot was even there. Some cash, load of steroids, but the police generally don't pursue steroids. It's not worth the paperwork. But they bailed me and gave me a court date. Now, the solicitor says to me, you need to make it look like you're making efforts to rehabilitate, to be better, to do better than you are, so you need to go and get a job. I said, okay. Right, let me ask around. Very long story short, I end up taking a job working security in Liverpool city centre, working on the doors. Why I thought that would look good in a courtroom, I have no idea. But it was a job. But that really exacerbated the situation from being small time, low connections, trying to be a little bit of a badass, but realistically I was an ant on the scale of, what that can actually look like. When I started working on the doors in the Liverpool city centre, it's put me in an environment where I was mixing with like the old guard of Liverpool, like the OGs in their circles, and, oh, you've got contacts overseas. What are you moving? How much are you buying? What's this going for? Okay, well, what could you do with this? What could you do with that? And I was loving it. I was thriving off it. I was like, oh, this old generation of gangsters even want to know who I am. Like, but they were basically using me because I had contacts in places around the world where the value of any drug is substantially higher. On the islands, Australia, Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, anywhere where it's difficult to get things into, and because I already had a system utilizing the postal system to get things through. Like they had access to big quantities and lots of varieties, and I had people on the other end who could get a substantial amount of money for them. So they see me as a cash cow. So they took me in straight away. But I walked straight into it. I was like, this is great. I'm in with these boys now. But the more and more I delved into that scene, I very, very quickly realized I am fucking insignificant. Like, I've dealt with some serious psychopaths. And when you think you're the big tough guy because you're like 19 stone or you're 20 stone, you think you can handle yourself. There are men that I went on to meet, especially some from Eastern Europe, who must be 65 kilo and 5'4". And if they said jump, I would say how high. Like, you very quickly realize that there is levels. There's levels not only to the financial side of things, but there's levels of what people are prepared to do if you wrong them.
What do they do?
You could go on a missing list very easily for not a lot of money. And, a lot of the Eastern Europeans that we dealt with during that period of my life, they do some pretty fucking horrible things for a very small amount of money. And that's what eventually led on to me being arrested properly, was utilizing one of them to handle a situation for me. And I think we only paid him like £500, and he really hurt somebody for us. And that somebody eventually went on to work for me and then get arrested and then give the police everything they needed to put me away for quite a long time. Like, that was very much karma coming full circle. But point being, all he wanted was £500 and he'd have done whatever we'd asked. If he wanted to lose fingers, he'd have lost fingers. And having that at your disposal, and I cringe looking back on it now, but having that at your disposal, you feel powerful, especially, as I say, when you're loaded full of trenbolone and you're loaded full of attention and everyone's telling you the man, and you're able to orchestrate things like that for a very small amount of money is absolutely wild. But you can't be naive to the fact that there are many other individuals like that who will do the exact same thing for anybody else who's willing to pay them that amount of money. And that was something that become apparent to me when I was in prison, that it doesn't matter how big or how gangster you are, there's somebody who's willing to do nasty things to you for a very small amount of money. Like, who you are doesn't matter. And I think the generation before me, like the era before you and I think respect was very much a big thing. Like, you wouldn't trouble that man because he is who he is, and you know better not to do that. Now it is very much the Wild West. You can get a kid off a council estate who's 16, 17. You can put a gun in his hand for £500, pay him £1,000, and he go and shoot somebody for you. Like it is the Wild West. Like even in my era when I was doing what I was doing, and this is only 13, 14 years ago, like firearms were relatively difficult to come by, but even more so, firearms that had ammunition were extremely hard to come by. So there's plenty, there's a fair amount of guns around. But having a gun and having a gun with ammunition are two very different things. Now, and certainly the last 5 to 10 years, it's become that easy to acquire them. They're everywhere.
To go back to this progression now, you're becoming a bigger fish in a bigger pond. You're a bouncer on the door at a nightclub in Liverpool. What was the craziest experience you had trafficking drugs?
Craziest experience that I can talk about. I think I become personally desensitized quite quickly to everything. So at the time, like measuring that would be very difficult. I started working with an Irish guy. I had some quite deep IRA links, and absolute fucking psychopath, like absolute psychopath, just looking for any reason to do something insane. And he'd been introduced to me through a friend. I didn't know much about him. Ex-military, I knew he had a screw loose, as we'd say. And we got close with him, and he was supplying us with work for a while. We were sending some stuff back and forth to Ireland. And he, I remember he called me one day. This was must have been like late morning, and we'd become quite entwined. And he was the kind of personality, and I met a few people like this along the way, but he was the kind of person who you didn't want to say no to. And it's not because he'd ever threatened me in any way. I just seen how he conducted himself with other people, and he's not somebody that you really wanted to even get into that scenario with, but he was essential to what we were doing at the time. So play nice, and don't get me wrong, I could get along with him. But similar to the other guys who I met who shared personality traits that he did, you could get along with him and think you were the best of friends, and he could switch for no reason at all. And I met a handful of people like this in my life, and they are truly the scariest people that I'd ever met. People who are entirely unpredictable. If you know somebody is an axe-wielding psychopath and they're like that 24/7, you know to keep your distance and you know exactly what to expect. But if somebody can be decent for 14 hours a day and you can have a normal conversation, we could sit here having dinner, and the next thing you know, you've got a cup smashed over your head for absolutely no reason other than he's just had some sort of paranoid thought that, oh, you were going to do it to me first. Like people like that, they are absolutely terrifying. And he called me. This was early into our relationship, but I already felt that kind of obligation to aid. And he rang me. It's around about 11 o'clock in the morning. He's like, Nick. He's like, you need to get here now. I said, get where? He's like, I'm at home. He's like, someone's just shot the house up. He's like, I need you to get here now. We need to go and sort it out. And I'm like, fucking hell. Like, what do I even say? Yeah. I lived in a place called Toxteth, Liverpool. He said, you're going to get here now? Yeah. He's like, go on, I'll see you soon. Puts the phone down. I'm like, oh, what the fuck do I do here? Like, I can't say no, because then I just look like I haven't got his back. So I've called him a friend of mine. I was like, he's called. I was like, we need to go over. Someone's just shot his house up. It was one of the lads that I worked on the door with. Another big lad, but soft just like me, very much bravado look. Looked the part, but you know, we'd experienced nothing like this before. And I had a bulletproof vest in the house. So I put the vest on, I put my hoodie on, picked my pal Carl up, and we drove over to Toxteth. It took us about 15 minutes. We pulled up outside our man's house, and it's just bullet holes in the front of the house. Middle of the afternoon, no police, just holes in the front of his house where somebody shot it up in the morning, as you do. And he comes out just as we pulled up. He's like, "You ready? Jump in the van." So we get out the car, and he had a van, 3 seats in the front, and the back was just like one of them sliding doors. It was just like storage, transit. He's like, "Jump in." So we jumped in, the three of us jump in the front of the car. I said, "Where are we going?" He's like, "We're going round to his house now." I was like, "He's just shot your house up and we're driving around to his house." Yeah. Sound. Don't worry about it. Sound. What the fuck have we got? I'm looking at Carl and I'm like, what the fuck have we got into here? Middle of the morning. We drive round to the house and he's like, there's some bats and bars in the back of the van, grab what you want. And he jumps out the front of the driver's side and just like jogs and power walks straight to the front door of this house. And I'm stood there holding the door on the van and I'm like, I've got no idea what's on the other side of this door. Like whoever is just in here, as far as we're aware, has just shot up his house. So somebody's armed inside and we're going in blind with a fucking crowbar. And that moment there, that was one of the scariest, even though it wasn't one of the most intense of everything that would happen there afterwards. But because we were so fresh into that world, it was like, okay, now we're charging at this front door. I've got a crowbar in my hand. Somebody's armed to the teeth behind there. What possible chance have we got? But our man's gone straight to the front door. I'm like, I can't go that way because then I've got to deal with him later. He's probably just going to shoot me. So I'm all in. We've just got to go in. I've got to pretend and he's obviously perceiving us with the facade and the bravado that we've been putting on as to, we're the big boys. This is what we do, driving around in fancy Range Rovers, whatever. He doesn't know that 12 months previous, I'm picking up fucking Mars bar wrappers and putting them in a bag trying to help the community. Do you know what I mean? As far as he's concerned, we're thoroughbreds, big lads. Like Carl, my man, he's like 6'3", 6'4", 20 odd stone. Like we both look the part.
You've dug yourself a hole.
Yeah, big time. He's thinking it's just normal. He's just normal to use like it is to me. I'm at the front door and he just goes straight and that was probably one of the scariest moments of the whole thing, one of the wildest moments, just because I wasn't prepared for it. And as the guy has opened the door, our man's just gone straight through. Didn't even wait to see what was behind there, just went straight through. And there was only one fella in there on his own. And we battered this guy in his front room, claret all over the place. He must have been in there for 4 or 5 minutes and left straight back into his van. And his house was only like 2 or 3 minutes away. He was literally around the corner. We could have walked, drove back to his house. He's like, nice one, lads, I'll get on you later. And goes back in his house. Me and Carl get back in the car and we're driving back through Liverpool city centre in complete silence. Like, what the fuck has just happened? Police sirens going the other way. And we just sat there until we got to the tunnel. So we must have drove in silence for like 10 minutes. Like, what the fuck has just happened? Like, we could have been dead the minute that door opened. And that kind of, from there onwards, I was desensitized to a lot of it then, and it was just another one, just another bit of drama, just another bit of this. But that moment was very much losing the innocence that I was carrying, and I was still had protected behind this facade that was like, okay, we're in a different world here. That was about 7 or 8 months after that when I eventually got arrested and went to prison. But that half a year that followed that was very much in that theme.
Well, I want us to get onto your arrest. You've mentioned one of your favourite stories involving your grandma's safe. What happened there?
Sally the Safe.
She has a name.
Yeah, may she rest in peace. I love this story, man. I really love this story. This is one of the few from that era that I enjoy telling. The rest of it, most of the other stories, I'm like, I hate telling these stories again. It makes me cringe so much, even though it's very important, to where I am today. I love this story. So when I got arrested, the arrest that eventually led to my imprisonment was with Jersey police, Jersey in the Channel Islands. Now, I'd been sending drugs over to Jersey for quite some time, and the markup there is absolutely wild. It's like 20, 30 times what you'd get for the same product on UK mainland. The guy that I had working for me over there got himself arrested on something unrelated. And then the guy that I eventually sent over to replace him is the guy that I told you we got assaulted by Chico, our Albanian friend. Because he tried to muscle in on one of the clubs that we had in Liverpool that we were selling through, or that one of our guys was selling through. He tried to muscle in on that situation quite aggressively, and I caught wind of it, caught his name, and I set up a fake drug deal between a friend of mine who looks very timid. He looks like a student, so he looks completely harmless. He is completely harmless. And I set up a situation there where I said, text this guy, tell him you want £100 worth of whatever. I said, but I want you to go and I want you to meet him personally and I want you to dress as dorky as you can. He says, okay, Nick, does that, comes back. I said, right, I'll give it a week and then I want you to go and get 5 times the amount. Same again. Done, gone. And then I says, right. I said, this is where I really want you to work the head on it. This is where I really want you to get into role. He's a friend of mine from a long time, but he wasn't involved in anything even remotely dodgy. I said, I want you to tell him that you're due to get your student loan the next bout. I said, and that you've had this idea that you want to spend it on a larger amount of drugs and that you want to sell it around and make yourself some money to set yourself up, whatever. I said, he's going to think he's onto the deal of a lifetime because he's going to think you've got no idea what you're asking for, what the price is, what the qualities are. And he did. He said, look, he said, me and my roommate have got near £10,000 between us from our loans and whatever else. He's like, we want to buy in bulk. So this lad thought he was onto the deal of a century. So they arranged to meet. And that's when we called our Albanian friend over from Newcastle. I said, this guy's going to meet. He's going to bring a few kilo with him. I said, I want you to take it off him. And I want you to make sure that he knows by the end of it that he's not working in that part of Liverpool unless he works for us. I was like, yeah, Nick, no problem. So they arranged to meet. My dorky looking friend in the driver's seat. The lad who tried to muscle in on the work in the passenger seat, and Chico sat in the back of the car. And he'd taken the headrest off. And he managed to get down some alleyway. Like, I wasn't there for when this actually happened deliberately. I drove him down some alleyway, battered him, took the drugs off him, took his clothes off him, took his shoes off him, just left him in the street with a message. And then I contacted him a couple of days later. I said, this is why what happened has happened. If you want to continue doing what you're doing, you do it under our umbrella or you don't do it at all. Because I was ego mad at the time. Like, this is all mine. And we got talking, we got into conversation, and it turns out that he used to live on the island of Jersey. This is when things had just stopped for me there. I said, oh, really? So you know the place well? He said, yeah. I said, okay, I've got an idea to pitch to you. I said, how about I set you up over there? I'll pay for your accommodation, your flights, your lifestyle, whatever else, and you kind of pick up where we left off. I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Let's do that. And he's landed on this island, and straight away he's been given it all the bravado of, oh, I work for these gangsters from Liverpool. Like, you know, this is me. I'm here now. I'm establishing myself, blah, blah, blah. And he got himself on the radar so quickly. But he had like 15, 20 grand he was meant to be sending back to us from these sample packs. And again, normally we just send it in the post. But I just had some drama with my then girlfriend. And I said to Carl, the same guy who I worked on the doors with, I said, should we just go over to Jersey for the weekend and just pick the money up ourselves? I was like, we'll just use it as an excuse to go over, get away, go on some jet skis, have a good time, do what we're doing. He's like, yeah, let's do it, Nick. So we flies over to Jersey, and unbeknownst to us, they had us under CCTV from the minute we stepped off the plane. Like, there's photos of us stepping down from the plane. Like, that's how quickly they were onto it. Like, we weren't even off the plane, and there's photos of us getting off. So they're obviously aware that we were coming, because he must have said to whoever it is that's informing on him, oh, look, my guys are coming over. So they'd just checked the manifesto and been like, okay, this is who's coming. So they had us under obs. Now, the reason, the reason I just had issues with my then girlfriend is because I'd not long split from my previous ex, and this is someone I was newly dating. And we've been together a long time, the previous girl. We had a lot of sex toys, like all kinds of bits and bobs. And it was still kind of like, are we getting back together? Are we not? And I didn't want to throw our sex toys away and then let's just get on good terms again. And it'd be either, oh, why have you done that? Or you throw them away because you've seen someone else. Where I was like, what can I do with them? I don't want them kept in the house because I'm now seeing this new girl. What do I do with them?
This sounds like there must have been a lot of sex toys.
There's a lot of sex toys. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of hormones. Yeah, busy guy. So I thought, I've got a spare safe. And the spare safe is at my nan's house. And I was like, I'll just fill the safe full of sex toys. And no one's going to get in it. And I know where it is. And at least if I need to go and pick them up again, I know where they are. So I fill this safe with sex toys. Locked away in my nan's house, of all places. But my nan's never going to see them because it's locked. Of course, she's never going to see them. So now we're back on the island of Jersey. And we must have been there for an hour and a half at most. And we went down to a pub in the like the town centre in St Helier. And we sat down to order some food. Me, Carl, the big guy, and then this other lad, Ibrahim. He's a little bit older than me. And we sat down to order. We'd only been in there a couple of minutes, and a woman come and stood next to me, dressed in normal clothes. I thought she was there to take my order. So I start reeling off what I want from the menu, and she's just looking at me like with daggers. I'm like, do you want my order or not? And then, boom, police everywhere, swarmed the pub. Like they surrounded the whole place. Must have been 15, 20 police officers at least, swarmed the whole place.
Why do you think she came over first?
I don't know, And I've never, that's never occurred to me why she was the first there. And maybe that was a signal of, I don't know, maybe I've lingered and I've overheard the conversation. These are definitely the guys or what.
I guess you wouldn't have helped yourself reeling off the order in a Scouse accent.
No, definitely not, no. And obviously me and Carl at the time, both like this, like we stick out like a sore thumb. We had no business being in Jersey. So they arrest us, take us to the police station, and they interview him first, Ibrahim. And without even any prodding from the authorities, like, because you get a copy of any interviews that are relevant to your case. So I got a copy of this. And he's like, look, I'll tell you everything that you need to know about Nick. Like, I just want to be set up in a new life somewhere. He'd obviously also watched too much Sopranos and thought he was going to get put in witness protection over a small amount of drugs. But so he gave them loads. Not only did he give them loads, he gave them far more than what the reality was, in that he said, if you check his passport, he flies all over the world all the time. Blah, blah, blah. So obviously they run my passport check. Because I've been everywhere through the parkour days and everything else, it looks like I've been all over the world doing dodgy deals. Like all this story that he's feeding them makes me sound like the next big thing. So they contact Merseyside police. They say, we've got this guy, we believe he's big involvement. He's like, but we need you to search his premises back home. So they took an address off me. They kept me excommunicado for 3 days, so I wasn't allowed contact with anybody. And the address that I gave them was my nan's address, because I thought, I'm not giving them my address, and my address is non-record, so they're not going to find it. So all they're asking me for is an address. I was like, what's an address I can give them where I know that it's completely clean? I'll give them my nan's. So I gave them my nan's address. And it took them about 2 days, I think, to get the actual search warrant, because obviously there's a lot of red tape cross-border. And I think it was about 12 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. The police have pulled up to my grandmother's house, and they've knocked. They haven't gone through the door. They've knocked, because obviously there's other people that live there. So they've knocked first. They've been allowed in, ripped the house to pieces. And my nan said to me after the fact, she's like, they looked so excited and happy when they found that safe. Like they thought they'd hit the jackpot. Like, this is going to be full of guns, kilos, like everything you can imagine is going to be in this safe. Like they thought they'd hit the jackpot. And there was a huge squad of police there, and they took the safe out onto the front garden. And this is quite a wide residential street. So like 30, 40 houses in each direction would have been able to see this playing out on the front garden at my nan's house. There's like 15, 20 police officers outside the house with they call it a red key. Maybe you've seen the big like metal, I don't even know what you'd call it, just a big piece of metal that they ram the doors with. And they spent like 10 minutes on the front, boom, to the front of the safe, boom, boom, like just waiting for this pot of gold that's going to be on the other side. To eventually burst the door off the safe, of course, to just unveil a giant safe full of dildos and everything else that you can possibly imagine. So they thought they'd really hit the jackpot, and all you've got is an entire squad of Merseyside police standing there with presumably a load of plastic willies in their hands. And they had to bail me. And to the day she died, sorry, my nan, she never once mentioned what they found in that safe. Never ever mentioned it. And I had a lot of engagement with the police in recent years as well, Merseyside police especially, and no one's ever mentioned that to me. Like I've never heard from any of the officers that were actually on site that day. Like I would like to think that they've blown the front of that off, and one of them's gone, oh, fucking hell. Got to laugh, haven't you? Like you would hope that was the reaction. And they bailed me anyway. Long story short, I got into more drama, and it was just a waiting game there. And then eventually, like I went on the run for a few months when I knew like the actual court date was coming up, because I thought they're going to get me one way or another. And I was just getting deeper and deeper into it. And eventually they arrested me, flew me back over to Jersey. It was like Con Air. Like you're on a residential, you're on a domestic flight. You're not on a private police flight. You are literally marched past everybody on EasyJet whilst you're cuffed up looking like a terrorist. Very dramatic. Got to Jersey, and they eventually sentenced me to 6 years, of which I'd served 3. So I got 6 years the first time. But that was, and I've said this publicly quite a few times, that was the best thing that could have possibly happened to me at that time.
Why?
By an absolute mile. Because if I hadn't have been arrested at that point, or very soon thereafter, I'd have been dead. I'd have got myself into, I mean, I already was in way beyond what I was capable of handling. But if I'd have continued down that path on a long enough time scale, I'd have got myself into something with somebody that was way out of my depth, and I'd just ended up dead. Or I'd ended up arrested for a hell of a lot more, because what they eventually prosecuted me for was a drop in the ocean compared to what they could have prosecuted me for. So, although I didn't feel it at the time, I seen that as a victory. Like that stopped me going further down that path of either getting myself shot dead or getting myself even longer in prison. And it allowed me to dissociate from everybody that I had in and around me at the time. In the first instance, it was, well, I can't have any contact with these people because everything's recorded, so I need to avoid it. And then when the dust settled, it was like, this is the perfect opportunity to never open that door again. And I'd lost, and this is one of the most profound moments of my entire life. I'd lost most of the friends in the community that I'd built over the parkour era of my life had drifted away whilst I'd gone down this path. And at the time, I was convinced they were the problem. I'm not the issue. They're the issue. I wasn't spotting the recurring theme that all these good people in my life are vacating, they're exiting, and all these new people are coming into my life. I'm not the issue. They're the issue. They're the problem. They've just got a problem. And I'd lost most of them OG friends, or at least they'd very much distanced themselves from me. And I had all these new friends around me that I'd met while I was working on the doors, because I had a 15-bedroom apartment in Liverpool city centre at the time, like right spot bang in the centre. It was across 3 floors. I had 5 bedrooms on every floor, living room on every floor. And when I was finishing up on the doors and the lights come on in the club, I'm like, everyone back to mine. So I had people, them and parasites attached to me, because whenever we go out, I'd buy the bar out. If you come back to the apartment, all right, there's a safe full of drugs there, help yourself. Like, we just be partying for days. And like I because I was getting so much attention from all these new people, it was very easy to not consider why I was losing all these old people. So it wasn't even a thought in my mind at the time. And then when I went into prison, for the first couple of months, everybody from the new friend list, they stay in touch. So people are sending letters in, because you're still, and it sounds cringy to say this, but this is sadly the way of the world, certainly amongst young people, you're still the guy. And you've just been arrested, you're still hot topic. People still want to talk, yeah, he's my guy. Oh, yeah, have you heard the news? Yeah, he's just been arrested. Oh, well, he's my guy. Yeah, we do this and we do that. So for the first couple of months, things feel normal. I'm still getting letters from these new friends. People are still staying in touch, sending me photos in of, the big champagne parties that we've had. And I start filling the wall up with these photos that come in. And I tell the same story anytime I get an opportunity to, because it's such a profound moment. Profound in the way that it happened. And that in the prison cell that you get in Jersey, you get a picture board, and it's like a foam board, and it's maybe, I want to say 4 feet wide, maybe 2 feet tall, and you use drawing pins to pin your photos to the wall. And over the first few months, people are sending me in photos, as I say, from all these parties, the fancy cars, that entire lifestyle. And I fill this board left to right, top to bottom. And as the time goes on, and bearing in mind I'm going through steroid and diazepam withdrawals now, benzodiazepine withdrawals, because I've gone cold turkey. And I've been abusing steroids like no one's business for the 1.5, 2 years previous, and I just had to stop cold turkey. But because I was taking Trenbolone and I was suffering with insomnia, I was also heavily dosed up on benzodiazepines. I was taking like 80 milligram a night to sleep, which you could put a fucking elephant down with. Like a medical dose realistically is about 5 milligram, and I'm taking 80 a night. So they had to wean me off diazepam as well, because you can die from withdrawals of benzos. So they weaned me down, but my hormones were all over the place. Like, it was crying my eyes out every night for no reason at all. But X Factor be on the telly, crying my eyes out. Like, I'm a celebrity, I'm crying my eyes out. And I'm crying on the top of this double bunk with this southerner fellow underneath me, this older boy. And I'm trying to like cry quietly on the top bunk because I don't even know why I'm crying, but my hormones are so skewed. And a couple more months went by and the letters from the new friends, had started to drop off in frequency, right? Less and less. I'm old news at this point. There's nothing to benefit from having me in your life anymore, and the gossip isn't hot anymore. So you're not getting any benefit from being able to talk about, oh my God, this is what happened. So they start to drop off. And then few and far between old friends start sending letters in. Nick, Ed, what's happened? I hope you're okay. Sorry to see that things have gone that way. You know, sending you all the best. Hope you're good. One of my OG friends, parkour friends, wrote to me, and he'd just come back from France to the same place. And there's a famous rock climbing wall there called the Dame de Lac, the Lady of the Lake. It's been closed for like 30 years because 2 climbers fell off it and died, I think. But we use it for like free soloing, so we just climb on it anyway. It's fenced off. But he sent me a letter, and the letter had a piece of stone from the actual rock wall itself that he posted in. Took a week to get through security because they had to test what it was. He sent me a little rock. But they started coming in, and this went on for like a period of months. So they'd send me some photos from the old times, and then gradually, one by one, I'd take a photo down of this new lifestyle, champagne parties. I'd come down, put it in the bin, and I'd replace it with one of the photos of the parkour scene, or whatnot. And this gradually went on over the space of months, and I didn't consciously observe the transformation of the board until the board was completely changed, and this took months. And I remember it like it was yesterday. This is, as I say, one of the most profound moments of my life, and my ability to visualize this, I still feel like I'm there when I remember it. And I remember looking up at the picture board. I was sat on my 2-inch blue mattress looking up at this picture board. And it's like I hadn't even been present for the last few months of the transition of taking some down, putting some up, taking some down. And I look up at the board and the whole thing has changed. There's not one photo left on there from the first iteration that I'd put up of all of the parties, the cars, all of that had come down. Now I'm just looking at this wall of my life that existed prior even getting into bodybuilding. Like pretty much every photo that was on that wall was before the day that I decided to join the gym. All the people that were up there, the experiences, and it was at that moment where I was like, fuck, what have I just done with my life for the last 2 years? Like, I've just thrown everything away. Like what it means to be me. You know, everything that I built, the relationships that I built, the journeys that I've been on, what was important to me. Like I felt like I'd just come out of the mist. I was like, wow. And I'm so grateful for that moment. And today I'm so grateful for that moment because I'm looking up at the board. I'm like, that's what matters. Not the cars, not the money, not the bullshit. Like what I'm looking at on that board, that is to have done that subconsciously and clearly put up what is a display of the happiest and most precious moments of my life. And it wasn't the big money. It wasn't the ego. It wasn't me being in a position where I had control or I had power. It was literally just groups of me and my hippie friends doing hippie shit, just having a good time, climbing walls like that. And that hit me. And it was from that moment onwards. And I must have been in about 5 months at this point. I was like, that is it. I am never in my life going back to that space. I'm not associating with them people. I'm not in any scenario am I even going to give that an inch through fear. It may be taking a mile. I am cutting off completely. And from that day onwards, I cut connection or remained out of connection with everybody that existed from that new chapter in my life. And I re-nurtured relationships with my old original friends. And I was within 6 months after that, I still had 2 years left on my sentence to do, but I was ready to come home. I was like, I know exactly what I'm coming back to, and I know exactly what I want to do. And I'm just going back to the previous version of me, and no matter what it takes for me to stay in that mindset and to continue being that individual, that's what I want to do. Because that's who I am, and I'm not going to allow myself to fall back into that same trap. And that's why like I've advocated in years quite strongly against the likes of competitive bodybuilding and the likes, because I'm like, the values that most people take away from that aren't positive.
Mm.
You can, but for most, I don't think that it leads anywhere nice. And I'm not saying if somebody does a bodybuilding show tomorrow, you're going to go on to become an international drug dealer and end up in prison. You're certainly not. But I think, people just need to be very, very aware of situations where you can be tempted in by the beast of chasing fame, fortune, power. It's scary. And to go from the extreme that I did, it's not as if I was already on a bad path and it just took a little nudge over the edge. Like, I was in a really, really good place, man. My life was so positive, and I so quickly got consumed by the darker side of the bodybuilding world. And obviously that was compounded and catastrophized by a lot of issues that most people won't face. But it was the values that kind of stemmed around that kind of led me at least in the direction of, and then I just ran with it.
And I feel like you'd abdicated agency at that point as well. Whereas replacing this board photo by photo, you had taken back control of your life. You weren't letting life happen to you anymore. You were happening to life, right? Whereas from hearing you speak about charging at a door and with no idea if the guy on the other side is going to shoot you, you still did it because you had to, out of fear, right? Whereas it feels like this is a critical point where you could have gone, I've had this upbringing, I've had this happen to me, I'm in prison, and you go into self-destruct mode. You abdicate all responsibility from your actions, you blame something else, and then you let life take you wherever it takes you. But you chose not to do that.
Yeah, and that is a very difficult choice to make in prison, because it's a breeding ground for everything that surrounds that lifestyle. And it really, really is. It's a school for criminals. No matter where you are, no matter what level of criminal that you are, once you enter prison, it's an opportunity to network. You are taking people who are a 3 out of 10 on the scale and mixing them with 7, 8, 9s out of 10s on the scale. You're just opening the world up to them. And I think the biggest battle that any individual faces who has been convicted of a crime, certainly drugs, is the media. And that haunts me to this day, because like my offense, for example, and this is just to use me as an example, this isn't why it was me. I was convicted of a drug offense. Now, that's documented on the internet. Now, if I want to do business with anybody, then they will run anti-money laundering checks on me. They'll run a list of checks to make sure that I'm not on any naughty lists. And I'm not. I pass every single anti-money laundering check. Like there's no black spots against my name at all. However, you also have what's called an adverse media report. And anytime you apply for credit and they do their due diligence, you also get an accompanying adverse media report. They see you as too high a risk because you've been convicted. It's bad character. Which means even if your sentence is such and your actual crime is such that it doesn't impose in any way on your ability to get a job or to get a bank account, etc., because the government can't do that because we have the Rehabilitation Act, so they can't come out and say, oh, you're going to be punished after you've served your punishment, because that's not coherent with the Rehabilitation Act. However, all of these institutions are owned by private entities who can do whatever they want. So even though that your crime and under the Rehabilitation Act, your time is served and you are done, for everything else in the world, i.e. employment, insurance, housing, you have an adverse media check and you're fucked for life, which is where I am at the moment and where I've been for the last 10 years. It's because I have that black spot against my name from an adverse media report. I can't get anything. I can't get car insurance. I can't get a bank account. I can't get a mortgage. I can't get anything. I'm a multi-millionaire. I can't get a mortgage. I couldn't get something on finance for £300 if I wanted. Cannot. Categorically cannot.
Seems like the most counterproductive thing you could possibly do to incentivize people not reforming after going to prison. And it's crazy how far you've come now from being behind bars and that you didn't let it disenfranchise you. And I want to get onto everything that's in the latest chapter of your life. How'd you get from behind bars to multi-millionaire?
With a lot of difficulty. Sadly, for all the wrong reasons too. And this is going to sound arrogant, and I don't mean it in any way arrogant or ostentatious. Like, becoming a multi-millionaire wasn't the difficult part for the reasons that one might expect. But everything else that's been thrown at us on the journey to get there, because of my background, is what's made it extremely, extremely difficult. And I think the main part of this chapter for me, for this second half of my life, the more positive half, would be the pandemic. And that was a gift and a curse at the same time. That was probably the most positive and most impactful period of my life, but it also put me back on the radar after going back under the radar for so long. And when I come home from prison at the end of 2017, and I was a new man. I was inspired, motivated, positive. Like, I was thankful to be home. I was thankful not to be that person anymore. I was thankful that the people that I had in my life to begin with were there for me when I come home. Despite having lost me, despite me having lost them along the way, they were there for me when I come home. And I was able to fall back into the friendship group that I'd built in the parkour days very quickly. And it just felt completely normal, even though I'd been away for 3 years. And, you know, there'd been a lot of time past, probably half a decade since I lost my way and then spent 3 years in prison, but falling back into that community space, like, the only way I can describe it is like seeing family that you've not seen for years, but it feels like you've not spent any time apart. And 2018, 2019 were two of the best years of my life, and I'd not experienced that level of happiness for probably 10 years at that point. And all leading up to the pandemic, and I had the one gym that I had in my hometown. And when the pandemic hit, in the first initial lockdown, we conformed, as did everybody else. Like, we didn't know what it was. The sensible thing to do was to follow the instructions that we were given by those in charge, which was stay indoors and let's work out what the hell is going on right now. Like, this could be really, really bad. And we did exactly that. We followed the guidance. We shut down. We took the opportunity to renovate the gym extensively. So we get to the pandemic, we lock down, we renovate, and then we come back out of the national lockdown in the summer when it became apparent it wasn't quite the super flu we thought it was going to be. You know, there was still caution need to be exercised, but it certainly wasn't what we thought it was going to be. So we opened back up. I think we went down into the lockdown in the March, didn't we? And then we opened up again in the summer. Yeah. And life somewhat returned to normal. And then skip forward to the October is when they started introducing the tier system. So we're going to lock down, but we're only going to lock down certain areas. And tier 1 comes out, tier 2 comes out. Much of the country were in tier 2 at the time. And there was talks of them introducing a tier 3. And nothing had been mentioned up until this point of what this would look like. Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the time comes on TV, mentions we're going to run with this tier 3 system in Liverpool. We're going to put the legislation will be available online from tomorrow, whenever it was. Legislation's published online. I think it was on the parliamentary website. And he does another press release later that day and says, legislation's now been released Thursday this week, which was like 2 or 3 days' time. The following sectors are all to close immediately. It is what it is. And then reels off this list of sectors and business types that are to close under this new legislation. And 2/3 of the way through the list, it's health, fitness and well-being centres, etc., etc. And I thought, that's not coherent with what I've read in the legislation. And I scanned that legislation back to front meticulously, went through every single detail prior to the convenience that we have now with ChatGPT, where I could have just done it for me. Like, I scoured that thing back to front. There was no mention of anything whatsoever, nothing that could even be vaguely interpreted as we need to close as the health and fitness sector. There was nothing at all. And I thought, legislation is what we follow. That's the rule. What the Prime Minister says on TV is what the Prime Minister said. Like, it is what it is. That doesn't make it written in law.
Yeah.
So I thought, this isn't right, this. So I sent the legislation to a couple of friends, also gym owners. I was like, look, this is what I make of it. I've gone back to front, front to back, top to bottom, side to side. I was like, there's nothing in there that I think can even possibly be interpreted that way. What do you make of it? Nick, I think you're right. I said, okay. I said, well, what do we do here? I said, I think my position is that if they try and close us, that's not coherent with the legislation. That's not lawful. They categorically cannot, based on their own legislation, they cannot close us. I said, so what do we do? So we got a WhatsApp group together with gym owners in the area, in the Liverpool City region. And we collectively decided that, no, we're going to take a stand. Because amongst this list, the businesses not to close, you had like takeaways, pubs and a few other, like there was a few other businesses that were allowed to remain open that serve no benefit to the community, no benefit to national health, no benefit to anything other than the tax that gets paid through the revenue. And I thought, not only are we not mentioned, even if we were mentioned, how can you allow the likes of McDonald's sit-ins to be permitted, but an outlet for physical and mental health? No. Sorry, no. I mean, obviously that leads on to the eat out to help out and all that nonsense. It's like, hang on, if there's anything that we should be doing right now in a pandemic, is protecting people's immune systems. And effectively, what we're saying to them now is, you can't exercise. You couldn't exercise outside either at the time. If you remember, they were putting fences around parks and all sorts. So we're going to make it illegal for you to go to the gym. You're not allowed to exercise. You're allowed to leave the house once a day. Here's a voucher for discounted fast food. We want you to sit in a house, isolate, get no daylight, and consume fast food, subsidized by your tax money. And I'm like, something's not right here. Like, this isn't coherent with, we're in a national health crisis. Let's close the outlets for health and let's encourage poor health. So we banded together. I was like, no, we're going to do this. So I filmed a video outside the gym and I was like, Tier 3 is being introduced tomorrow. I said, we're not closing. I said, chances are we'll get arrested, we'll get fined. I don't know the extent of what the punishments are going to be. I said, but going off the letter of the law, the legislation that's been released does not include our sector. So not only does it not include our sector, I said the infection rates for our sector were like 1.7 in 100,000. It was way low. Reeled off all the benefits of just a couple of exercise sessions per week, the impact that has on the immune system, that has on your mental health. I said, so we're not going to close. So be what will be. What's going to happen the next few days, I can't tell you. Whether I'm going to be here to even continue the story in a few days, I don't know. But I'm telling you that we're taking a stance and we invite everybody from the Liverpool City region who owns a facility that in any way encompasses health, well-being and fitness to take a stand. If we do it in numbers, we'll get somewhere. If we don't, we'll be squashed.
What happened?
I get a visit from the police that evening to say, we've seen your video. It's getting quite a lot of traction. We want to let you know that if you don't close tomorrow, we are going to have to come. We're going to have to fine you, etc., etc. I said, that's okay. You do what you need to do. Comes the next morning, gets to 8 a.m. and I open the gym personally, so I'm there to put the shutters up. There is already an entourage of press outside the gym. Sky News were there, ITV were there, Channel 4, obviously all wanting the first bit of bait. I puts the shutters up, goes in. Loads of members come in who've also been told, obviously, they're not allowed to use gyms during this time. They were still there. They were there to support us. Gym was full. This would have been 8 o'clock in the morning. By 8:45, we had the armed division of Merseyside police turn up at the gym. 8 or 9 officers from the armed division. Bearing in mind, this is legislation and this is a fine that relates to environmental health. So this is a civil matter. Yeah, this isn't even a criminal matter. But there's almost 10 officers from the armed division of Merseyside police from the Matrix unit who are to deal with serious crime. That's murder, firearms, big drugs. Like, they've turned up to issue a fine for a civil matter. And they come in and they say, Nick, look, we don't want to have to fine you. You're all decent guys. He's like, it's £1,000 fine. He said, but not only is it £1,000 fine, he said, it doubles every time we fine you. And I said, well, how often can you fine me? And he didn't know the answer, so we had to make a quick call to come back. He's like, it's every 3 hours, Nick, and it doubles every time. So a maximum of 10,000, and then we can issue the £10,000 every 3 hours. So you're looking at 80 grand a day after the initial, which we'd have been out of business in a day at that time. He said, Nick, we do not want to do this. He's like, and he said off cam, he's like, based on what you've said, he's like, I don't think you're wrong in what you're saying, but we've been asked today by our, and I quote, our boss's boss to come down here and make sure you close. We have to make sure you close, and we don't want to have to fine you. I said, I'm going to need a minute. And I called the other two main gym owners who I've been in conversation with, Chris and Thea. They've got a gym about a couple of miles down the road. I said, guys, this is it. I said, I've got Merseyside police in front of me. I said, and they want to pull the trigger on this. And I said, are we doing this? And Thea's on the phone. She's like, yeah, of course we are. I said, no. I said, are we doing this? I said, I'll take this fine, knowing where it's going to lead and knowing that it is certain bankruptcy, knowing that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. If I know that you've got my back. If they come to you tomorrow, you take the same position. I don't want to be the only man out in the cold, but if you tell me we're out here together, I am in 100%. I said, so with that in mind, what do you want to do? You're like, Nick, we're in. It's the right thing to do. That's all I need to know. Thank you. I said, officer, write the fine. I'll take it. I said, I want you to do that. I said, I want you to do me a favor. I said, I want you to stand apart, do your social distancing, tick whatever boxes you need to do. I said, because I'm going to take a video of you now. I'm going to take a video of the gym, who's in here, and then I'm going to make some comments on camera as to what's just happened. I said, so protect yourselves. I don't want to get you in trouble. I said, do whatever you need to do. And they did. And I panned the video, filmed, panned past the police officers and zoomed into a giant sign that we've got on the back wall of the gym that lights up. It says the People's Gym. Zoomed in, filmed that. Loads of customers in the gym. And they give me the fine. And I made a video of me talking that I attached to the back of that and said, this is what just happened. This is why we're doing what we're doing. We're not COVID deniers. There's none of that whatsoever. This is purely government legislation says X, they're saying Y. And I put that video online and that went viral in like 10 minutes. I had like 6-7 million views on Instagram straight away. Same again on Facebook. I had every press outlet in the world harassing the life out of me that wanted a piece of it. We had big corporations, big celebrities. We share. It went wild. Off the back of that, we set up a government petition online using the Parliament's website. Like 650,000 signatures on it,
wow.
Which in the 10 years prior to that moment, the only individual I know that, as far as I'm aware, that had reached that number was Marcus Rashford and his free school dinners for kids. Like you don't see that kind of volume.
Wow.
And I did the tour around all the big news channels, debated anchors and politicians alike, and they all come at me with the same angle, and that was, don't you care that people are dying? Like they tried to vilify me straight away, from the get-go. And these are on live interviews, and I'm like, of course I care about people dying. That's what this is all about. I was like, I'm not, there is no opinion from me here. There is no opinion on COVID. There is no opinion on legislation. There is what's been released in terms of the government legislation, word for word, doesn't include us. That's position A. I said, but anybody who even has a modicum of scientific or medical literacy can tell you the importance of our sector on mental health, on physical health, on having any type of immune response to this virus. I was like, this is what we should be endorsing. I was like, here are the statistics. I said, and all I'm going to quote is government outlets, Office for National Statistics. So I was like, you look at any of the literature that's available right now through the Lancet, through the British Medical Journal, and I give them every bit of information. I was like, none of this is my opinion. This is government data, government positions. This is government financed studies. I was like, so you're not having an argument with me. This is me presenting government's own data back to them and saying, well, your data says X. Why are you doing Y? And every single person that I come up against in debate fell to pieces because they were expecting me to get into an emotional argument about not caring that people were dying. And I was like, no, I do care. And this is why I'm taking the position that I do. And even the likes of ITV Good Morning, they brought on a doctor who went on the segment with Eamon and Ruth.
Yeah.
And they like to bring an opposition on, don't they?
Yeah.
And they brought a doctor on. They didn't tell me they were doing this, and I don't watch TV, so I don't know what the usual dynamic of that show was at this time. So they brought me on. Oh, Nick, yeah, how you doing? Playing dead nice. And we've also got Dr. Chris. So, okay, great. And then they let me go first. They were like, Nick, what's your position? And I explained exactly what I've just said to you. I gave them the data. I gave them the infection data. I gave them all the data that we'd need in relation to exercise and its impact on the immune response, etc. And then it comes to Dr. Chris. And they move over to Chris. Like, well, what do you think, Dr. Chris? I thought, oh, here we go. But I was ready for it. And he's like, well, actually, I think Nick's right in what he's saying. I was like, I can't endorse him taking the position he has of breaking the law. He's like, but everything that he's saying is scientifically accurate. I was like, so I cannot offer a position against what it is that he's saying.
Boom.
Exactly that. And every single interview that I had was coherent with that outcome. And because of the position that we took and the way that we took it, we got a lot of support because it was like, hang on, this guy's not crazy. This isn't just some because you read it in black and white. They're expecting me to come on the news and be this like brute gym owner of, no, bro, I want to lift weights. You're taking weights off me and I just want to fucking lift weights, man. Yeah. They're expecting me to be that guy. Chicken and rice.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this is a conversation about national health and we don't need to get into any emotional like row at all. And so we get to the petition, gets to 650,000 signatures. It triggers an automatic parliamentary debate at 100,000 signatures. That's default. So if you get any petition to 100,000, it has to be debated in Parliament. Now, when we hit that number, I was like, we're well past it. This is us. We're going to get ahead. And they can't ignore the science. They can't. They're on TV saying, follow the science, follow the science, follow the science. And I'm like, okay, here's the science. Follow it. I said, so there's no way we lose here. And then I speaks to, I forget which representative it was for this particular conversation, but they were like, oh, the debates committee is suspended due to COVID because we can't have more than so many people in a room. I'm like, this is part of our democratic process entirely. Like, you can't just put that on pause. Like, you find a way, do it on video call, like everything else is working remotely. You're telling me that the part of a staple of our democracy cannot take place because you can't be in a room together. And obviously they're having parties in rooms together anyway at the time, as we now know. So I end up having a friend of mine broker a meeting between myself and Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House. And he invites me up to Chorley to meet him. So I drive up to Chorley, further up north, and sits with Sir Lindsay. And he says, okay, let's hear what you've got. We had a brief conversation before we got into it. And I thought, he seems like a good guy. It's very much one of the normal people, as normal as they get in the political scope. And I brought a presentation. I brought all the data, all the documentation that I had, all of the stats. And got halfway through this big presentation with him. I had all sorts from the British Heart Foundation, like you name it. I had it all. I was ready. And I got 2/3 of the way in and he stopped me. He's like, Nick, stop. And I thought, no, he's trying to shut me down here. So I'm trying to talk over him and he's like, Nick, just stop for a minute. And I'm like, no, you need to let me finish. He's like, Nick. He just looks me dead in the eye and I'm like, okay, sorry, go on. And he's like, I'm completely with you. He's like, I am absolutely behind you 100%. He said, I know the importance of physical exercise, not just for the points that you're making with regards to physical health and the immune system and benefits to the NHS, etc. He said, not only that, he said, I'm hyper aware of the impact on mental health it can have. He said, and I'll tell you why. And it was quite a daunting moment. He said, my daughter took her own life last year. She was only young. He said, and one of the only outlets that she had that made her happy was going to the gym. He said, it's one of the only things that she had and it made her happy. He said, so he's like, you don't need to go on. He's like, I'm fully behind you. He's like, you're giving me the information that you're giving me and the sources that you're saying it's coming from, if the data is what you says it is, then there's no argument, is there? There's no conversation to have. He said, so this needs to have its day in Parliament. He said, so this is what I'm going to do. And so don't need to hear it anymore. He's like, put it away. He said, when you leave here, he said, I'm going to call the Prime Minister immediately. He said, I'm going to tell him that you need to have this debate and you need to have it immediately. And in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, he's still a politician. Like, he could, as politicians do, and as most of us do as humans, they tell you what you want to hear. You leave the room. Well, he doesn't feel pressured to pursue then, does he? So I thought, I'm going to remain optimistic but realistic at the same time. A politician just told me he's going to do what I want. So I shook his hand. We left. I didn't even make it back home before I got a call. He said, Nick, I think this was on a Thursday or a Friday. He said, Nick, I spoke to Mr. Johnson. He said, your debate's going to take place on Monday. He's like, categorically 100% it's happening. Because I was like, are you sure? He's like, trust me, it's handled. And I couldn't believe it. I wasn't even home. The drive home was about an hour. I hadn't even made it home yet. I was like, wow, we're going to Parliament. So we had the debate, and they picked the MPs at random to attend. They all voted in favour. And Boris had to reverse his wording and state that we were allowed to open. And we were national heroes. Like, we were allowed to open. We returned access to millions of people to have that outlet for their physical and mental health. You know, we'd done a service to national health.
I remember it happening to me. I must have been 15, 16 in secondary school, away from my friends, away from training with them. One of the few things that bonded us together, I wasn't a big gamer. That was my outlet. And I remember seeing you running this petition online, making noise. You blew up in that period, and you did it for the people. You won it for us. And I remember getting back into training, being out of my room, which was, as someone who's grown up in a lot of comfort and doesn't have a lot to complain about, that lockdown was very hard.
Isolation is hard.
And you helped get us out of that, get us back into the gyms. And it's one of the few memories I haven't blocked out from that lockdown period. So thank you.
Very welcome, my man. And it was the support of everybody else that made it possible. And this again was true to my parkour roots. I was like, we can unify everybody here. We really can. And we did. For a brief moment, we unified the entire industry. And to see everybody truly unified as, no, we're one. We're the fitness industry. Whereas I'd never seen that up until that point, and I've been in the game a long time. Like, it was always my gym versus your gym, my brand versus your brand, CrossFit versus functional training, whatever. Everyone versus everybody. And for the first time in the near 10 years I've been in the space, it was, no, we are the fitness industry. Like, this is us. We do what we do, and we help people with their physical health, and we help them with their mental health. That's what we do. This is us. So powerful and so inspiring. And like, all that was rounded off with, I had an interview with the New York Times. They come to interview me at the gym. And they covered it really positively. Like, the wording was beautiful. He was so behind us. And that was released on my 30th birthday, which was the same day the lockdown was released. So I had the front page New York Times article and the legislation being, well, I say reversed, being kept in line with the wording all on my 30th birthday. Like, it was euphoric, man. We got nominations and awards left, right, and center. And that was the foundation of what I intended to build the next chapter on. But what I didn't realize is that had brought me back to the surface, brought me back to the attention of people that didn't want to see me do well.
Well, at the moment, this is a roaring success. You've got this beautiful narrative of a rehabilitated ex-criminal. You're on top of the world, more social media followers, more business potential to earn money. This is the scene where you ride off into the sunset and the movie ends there, happily ever after.
That was the hope. Little did I know that was just the beginning of the madness that would follow. I got contacted in the January of 2021. So this was 2.5, 3 months after we'd won the campaign, by Jersey Evening Post, their main newspaper on the island. And they said, Nick, we love everything that you're doing. We think you're a role model and somebody that we'd really like to showcase to show that it's possible to come out the other side and not completely give up hope and keep pushing and do some good in the world. He said, we'd like to run a before and after piece on you. And at this point, there wasn't a single news article on the internet of my original arrest. There was only the one at the time. And when I got home, I couldn't get a bank account. And when I found out why, it was because of the news article. I contacted that same newspaper and said, look, is there any chance you could take this down? I'm trying to rehabilitate, and this is preventing me from doing so. So they did. So at the time of them asking me this, there wasn't any record of my crime on the internet. And I thought, I'm taking a big risk here by talking about it and put it on public record again. I thought, I've got a good relationship with the police. Like during the lockdown, obviously we weren't meant to be open, and we'd actually closed the front door and we were using the side door for a while. And whilst I had police knocking on the front, I had half of the actual police force inside training. I had officers from the like the terrorism units, all sorts in there training on WhatsApp to their colleagues outside who were trying to get in the building. Like, just make sure you don't come in because we're all in here training to come in. To the point where like there was even one time where they'd been told they had to see the inside of the premises this time. So I had to hide multiple police officers in the attic in the gym so their colleagues could come in and check the rest of the gym. Like we had a good relationship. And as I said, I've always had a good relationship with the police. It's always been very much like, you're just doing your job. You don't write legislation. You don't write law. You're just there you took a job because you wanted to do some good in the world. You want to protect and serve. Like, I've got respect for that. So skip forward to this interview. I was like, look, I've got leverage on authority. I've got a good relationship with the police. Like, I'd like to get my story out there because I would like to inspire, because I know prison is a hopeless place. So I agreed to do the article. So on the Monday, they release newspaper 1, and it's a 2-page spread. And page 1 to 2 reads from free runner to drug runner. And that's the first half of my story. On the Tuesday was the continuation, from prison inmate to community hero. Big 4-page spread. And it was a beautifully written article, very positive. This is where Nick's come from. This is his struggle. This is what he's been through. He didn't go up hope. This is what he's doing now. He's doing well in his business. He's financially set. And he's been nominated for a BBC Sports Personality Award. He's got this charity award. He's got this. He's got that. He's in a really good place. And I thought, you know what, this is great. And I want to use this. And I've been asked to talk in Parliament later in the year on reform. I was like, this is great. I can channel myself down this and maybe do some good in the world. And maybe make up even just 1% for all the shortcomings of the prison system. Like, I'll give it a go. Now, that newspaper article is probably the worst decision I've made in my entire life, other than taking the direction of going down that path in the first place. Because when that was released, which would have been, I want to say March 2021, Jersey police had been sitting on evidence of me from years previous. Wasn't worth them bothering with. A friend of mine who I'd met in Jersey prison, it was my badminton partner. It's like a holiday camp, Jersey prison. Very different experience when I got to the UK prisons. He'd asked me for a contact, and I shouldn't have done this, and I'm guilty of this. He was buying cannabis off the internet, off the dark web, for him and a couple of his mates. And he'd asked me 4 or 5 times, he's like, Nick, my guy on the internet's not available anymore. Can you put me in touch with anybody? And I'm like, and the police have this correspondence on record word for word, and this is what really annoys me, is me saying, look, I'm retired from that world completely. Like, I've got nothing to do with it. Like, I don't want to get involved. He's like, oh, it's just a bit of weed just for me, lads. And I was like, bro, I don't want to get involved. It goes on for a few weeks anyway. And he harassed me. He's like, please, Nick, just this once. So I put him in touch with a friend of mine. I said, look, I don't want to hear anything about it. Use crack on. I said, I don't want to hear about it again. Don't mention it to me again. Don't ask me anything again. So I put these two in touch. A couple of months after that, he got himself arrested with a separate matter. It's nothing to do with this. And they took his phone. They pulled all the messages off it, and they found the messages between he and I. Now, I'm complicit there. Of course I'm complicit. They went on to exchange about £800 worth of cannabis, which is why the police never pursued my involvement when they found the messages, because what's going to come of it? Slap on the wrist. Like you wouldn't be able to imprison somebody for that quantity in any normal circumstance. It just wouldn't happen. So that's why they never pursued it. So that got left on the shelf for many years. Did nothing. Now, when the Jersey Evening Post article comes out, here's the national hero who defied government and won and yada, yada, yada. Like some of the headlines were very antagonistic towards the government. Like Daily Mail ran with Liverpool gym defeats government into submission. Like, you know, they were gassing the situation up.
It's embarrassing for the
It's embarrassing for them, yeah. So this article comes out, and I can't remember the exact day, but let's say it comes out on the Tuesday. On the Friday, that evidence that's been sat there for years untouched, now it's an active investigation again. And I found this out further down the line because you get what we call DEPS, which is like the timeline, the chain of events, chain of command. And the date is perfect. As I say, it's only got 3 days. I don't know exactly what days. Tuesday, the article comes out. Friday, they activate the case that's been doing nothing for years. And in the July 2021, they fly over again and they arrest me. And they arrest me in my house, the police at the door, and I'm like, what is it this time, guys? Because I know I've done nothing in a long time. Like I've had no direct involvement in anything for near 10 years. I'm like, what is it this time? What legislation have I breached? You know, what conversation are we going to have? Oh, we've got an arrest warrant from Jersey and the Channel Islands. And my heart sank. I was like, what? What could this possibly be? And I'm at the peak of my career now. Like I'm everywhere. There's hundreds of articles of me, national, global, all positive. I'll be arrested. And I thought, they couldn't tell me anything, or they wouldn't tell me anything while they were arresting me. They searched everywhere, obviously searched my house, searched the gyms, found nothing, of course. And they took me back over to Jersey. And for the whole flight, I thought, someone's put my name in a conversation where it doesn't belong here. Like this is an accident, and it's all going to get cleared up, and everything's going to be okay. I get to the island and land in the airport, and the main police officer who's investigating the case, he says, this relates to Anthony Dryden. And as soon as he said it, I knew exactly what he meant. So I thought, oh, fuck. Like I knew I was guilty straight away.
Did you go to prison?
Yes. I went back away.
How long for?
For the longest sentence in history for that crime. Now, I said to him straight away, he said, do you know what it is that I'm talking about? I said, I do. I said, I'm not going to waste your time. I said, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can't believe I'm here for it. I said, look, I explained the circumstances just like I have to you just now. I said, look, I will give you access to everything without question. I'll give you access to my mobile, the PIN, my emails, like every bank account, anything that you want, you're not going to have to try. I will give you it all right now. I said, because I have been squeaky clean for near a decade. I said, yes, I put these two in touch with each other, and I am guilty of that, and I'll take whatever punishment comes with it. Knowing the quantity and knowing that a prison sentence wouldn't come with that, I'm like, I'm not going to try and be deceitful here. I've made a mistake. I shouldn't have put the two together. I don't think it's the end of the world. To this day, I don't think it's a particularly big crime. Like, bearing in mind, Jersey, this is the same week they arrested me, the headline in their newspaper, Jersey aspires to be leader in medical cannabis. The UK is, of course, the largest producer of medicinal cannabis in the world. On the basis of this is a medicine that can be used to greatly benefit health for X amount of individuals, wherein the same government's taken the position of this is the most dangerous drug in the world and it damages us. Like, so when it's taxed, it's a medicine. When it's not taxed, it's a dangerous.
So they use your evidence.
So they use their evidence to come and get me. They arrest me. They bring me back. Now, I hire the best lawyer on the entire island, the hot shot, the one everyone talks about. I hire him. Cost me an absolute fortune. He does a bit of background info on me. He gets up and he says to the magistrate, he's like, look, this man is clearly reformed. He's like, look at everything that he's done in recent years. He's like, this amounts to a mistake that we should deal with properly. It's a breach of the law and we should deal with it appropriately. But sending this man to prison is not going to benefit society in any way, nor is it going to benefit him. You're not going to rehabilitate a man who's rehabilitated, and you're not protecting the public. So he should be granted bail. And the magistrate says, okay, we're going to grant you bail. This is on Friday, on the condition that you come back on Monday and we fit an electronic tag to your ankle. We don't want you leaving the island, but we will give you bail because you're clearly not a risk. So we leave the court on the Friday with bail, thinking this is okay. This is all going to be dealt with. It's going to be a bit of a PR headache, but it is what it is. Goes back on the Monday to get the tag fitted. The magistrate has been mysteriously swapped. Now, a new magistrate. Mr. Wickham, although you were granted bail here on Friday, I am rejecting that bail today. You're going to prison immediately. You should be aware that you've done this before, and this time you're facing up to 14 years in prison. Bearing in mind, as I say, the guidelines for something like this is not even a prison sentence. So you're to go to prison immediately, down in the dock. Like, I'm in, my partner's there with me, like I'm in tears in the dock. I'm like, what the fuck has just happened? Like, how have we gone from bail on Friday to all this is just going to be an easy open and shut to you go into prison and she's using numbers like 14 years. Like, I know that's not the case, but my partner who's sat in the stalls doesn't know that she's talking nonsense. So he send me away to prison. That's when I hired the best lawyer on the island. I said, look, I've done pretty much all the work for you. I said, I've gone through all the paperwork. I said, I've highlighted every bit that you need to know. I said, all of my mitigation. By the time we got to court, I had references from doctors, politicians, CEOs, everybody who's everybody had written me a character reference and been like, this guy's a good man. And this clearly represents a small mistake historically, which I hold my hands up to. I've never said, oh, I didn't do that. Like, you shouldn't be given a prison sentence at all, under any circumstance whatsoever. So everything shaped up to it being open and shut, community service, you're an idiot, don't do it again. When it come to sentencing day, and they gave all my spiel, he said, the guys who were in the court, like the attendees, they kind of like stand with you like security, they come into like the back bit and they were like, wow, Nick, that was great. Like, you've done a lot, haven't you? Like, this looks like it's going to go really well for you. And I was like, thanks, gents. Like, I have been working hard. I've been trying to do better with my life. And like, yeah, this is great. And me and my co-accused were charged with the same charge. It was importation of cannabis of 2 kilos or something and exportation of cash. Bearing in mind, the only reason this evidence had come to light is because he'd been arrested for another drug offence that was unrelated to ours. He'd done nothing positive with his life in the time in between. So logic dictates, well, he's going to get a much heavier sentence than I am, right?
Yeah.
I'd hired the hotshot lawyer on the island. Again, logic dictates it's going to work in my favour. We get to sentencing, and not only did they ignore all of the mitigation and everything else, they said they sentenced me with double jeopardy, and it's never happened in the history of that court before or since. And what happened is, so when there's a charge for drugs, and this stands for any drug charge, if I have a £10 note here and you have a £10 bag worth of cannabis, right, and we do this, we exchange, right? Well, now there's been an exchange of drugs, so that's drug dealing. But there's also the cash. So the cash, as soon as it swaps hand from A to B, that's removal of criminal property, or that is handling of criminal property. That falls under the Money Laundering Act. You're now a money launderer. It doesn't have to go in the bank. But the fact that you've taken that money, that now makes you a money launderer. But one doesn't exist without the other.
Yeah.
So they, legally speaking, they run concurrent. So you'll get a sentence for each because they're technically 2 separate crimes. But they run side by side. They don't run consecutively. So you'll get a sentence for X, a sentence for Y, but they start at the same time. So it doesn't add anything. Because to do anything other than that would be double jeopardy. They'd be charging you twice for the same act.
Yeah.
Now, we had one charge of importation of cannabis, and the other one was removal of criminal property, which was the exchange of funds. When they sentenced us for the cannabis, they sentenced us to like 1.5 years each, which falls way out of the guidelines for that quantity. Like, already I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is huge for what this is. Like there was a guy who got sentenced just before us, who'd been caught with 130 indecent images of children under the age of 5, got community service. Community service. We just got a year and a half for £800 worth of cannabis.
How long did you end up serving?
That's not the end. That's not the end. So they give us that, and then they read the cash, the exchange of funds sentence. 14 months. I was like, well, I'm only going to serve the longer one, so it's fine. Consecutively. So they added the two together, which has never happened in the history of that court, ever. It is illegal. But they give me 3 years for something that I shouldn't have got any prison sentence for. And I couldn't believe it. And they give my co-accused the exact same sentence who'd achieved nothing that I had in the interim and gone on to commit more crime, the exact same sentence. And we get back in, I couldn't believe it, January 5th, 2022. And I come back behind the courtroom to see my advocate, who I say he's the hot shot on the island, and he prosecutes for the state, so he's one of theirs. But he's been doing it 40 years. He said, Nick, he said, in the 30, 40 years I've done this, he's like, this is alien to me. He's like, you've upset somebody somewhere way above my pay grade. He's like, and I work for the state. He's like, you've upset somebody way above my pay grade. He said, we can appeal this sentence because it's against the law. He's like, and you will get them to run concurrently, not consecutively. So it'll come down to a year and a half. But the repatriation parameters of you transferring from Jersey back to mainland England are such that you are required to have a certain amount of time left on your prison sentence for them to issue the transfer to the UK. Now, if you're in prison in Jersey, you serve 2/3 of your sentence. If you're in prison in the UK, you serve 50%. So you do more time in Jersey than you do in the UK. Not only that, but you can serve about a quarter of your sentence in the UK on tag. So not only do you serve half, you can then serve half of the half on tag. So you do a quarter of a sentence rather than doing 2/3 in Jersey. He said, but this is where it gets tricky. He said, because if you appeal, it's going to take about 6 months. So if we take 6 months on this appeal and we win, that's then going to take you down to an 18-month sentence, of which you'll have served 9. He's like, but then you won't be eligible to transfer to the UK. He's like, so, and I forget the exact numbers, it might have been 2 years and 1 year. He said, so if you win this appeal, which you will, you'll serve more time in prison. So it seemed orchestrated to be exactly that. Well, we can do him with this, it's against the law, and he'll win on appeal. But if he does win on appeal, he's stuck on the island and he'll have to serve more time and he'll have to serve it under ours. So I did that. I got sentenced to 3 years. I had to serve 14 months. That 14 months was 100 times more difficult than the 3 years I'd served previous, because when I went in the first time, I went in at rock bottom. Any place I could go was up. At the time of my second arrest, I was at the top. Only place I could go was down. And then I had the media eat me alive because I'd had hundreds of global news outlets covering my positive victory in COVID, all then do a follow-up. Like, they absolutely mauled me, and they said I was guilty of money laundering. I wasn't guilty of money laundering. I've never been found guilty of money laundering. However, removal of criminal property, this, as I said, doesn't go in a bank. You've now got that £10 note in your hand. That's removal of criminal property. Removal of criminal property falls under the huge umbrella that is the Money Laundering Act. So purely going off black and white text, I'm guilty of money laundering. Now, money laundering, I don't know about you, but to me and mine, and to me and people I associate with, you say someone's a money launderer, I think they're washing money through a business. Like, I think they're up to like serious behavior, proper Walter White car wash behavior.
Yeah.
I was never found guilty of that. 2 people exchanged drugs, a small amount of money, and that falls under the Money Laundering Act. So therefore, they can legally call me a money launderer when I have never laundered money in my entire life. Now, that's where a lot of the problems come in as I come home. Obviously, during that sentence, a lot of people stepped away from me, politicians, brands, because it was risk. And risk. I can't defend myself now. People can say whatever they want, and it's not until I get home I'm going to be able to say, no, that's not true. Here's the evidence. So I get out. They give me a list of conditions on my... So when in the UK, you serve half your sentence in prison and half your sentence out of prison on probation, on license. So you're serving you're serving the rest of your sentence in the community.
Yeah.
So you have to see probation. You have rules. They give me, and generally speaking, you get standard probation rules. Everybody pretty much has the same, unless it's like a sex offense. So they give me my set of conditions, and they are more severe than they give to murderers. I could not move. I could not get in a car without prior consent. I could not get a taxi without prior consent. I could not get a public transport without prior consent. I couldn't stay anywhere from my fixed address. I was only allowed one mobile. I had to give my IMEI number in. I had to hand my passport in. Like, these are, and I put them on social media, my conditions. I was like, this doesn't seem right to me. This wasn't what I got last time. These aren't standard. And I had almost a dozen probation officers from all over the country messaging me like, please don't repeat this. Please don't use my name. However, you could be a sex offender, a murderer, a wife beater. You wouldn't have half of these conditions. Like, what's your crime? And I was like, it's non-violent. It's a historic drug offense. Oh no, you shouldn't have these conditions. Like, who've you upset?
Well, I don't want to jump the gun, but I know that we're running out of time, and putting these pieces together, the only question I have is, who did you upset?
That's a question that I still can't answer to this day. And that theme continues and continues up until as recent as last week. And I don't know if I'll ever truly know the answer. And when I come home, like, I've tried my best to continue being a good person. And I've tried to do well for those around me. And I've tried to continue pushing business in a selfless way, in that I give away more than I earn. That's a fact. You ask anyone who's close to me, I give away more than I take for myself. And you know, I've made it my life mission to try and do some good in the world, but at every turn, I'm faced by authority saying, no, you're not meant for this path. And I've had issue after issue after issue. And when I come home, I tried hard to keep pushing business. You know, I've been very successful in recent years, business-wise. I have the chain of gyms now. We have our equipment company factory out in China. But even opening the first of the new iteration of gyms, not too long after I come home, Customs had the building that we went for, this was the third gym in my chain. And we'd agreed, it took us a few months to agree terms. The agent was happy, who was listing the property. The landlord was happy. The freeholder who owns the land that the building's situated on was happy to take me on. Months and months of negotiations. The day that we turn up to collect the keys and sign the contract, ghosted, left in the rain with all my tradesmen. What's going on here? He gets a phone call 2 hours after standing in the rain, 2 hours after the point we were meant to be meeting. It turns out that the bank that gives the mortgage to the chap who has the freehold, who then leases his land to the landlord who owns the building, who then is going to lease that to us through the agent. Agent was happy. Landlord was happy. Freeholder was happy. The bank that provides the mortgage to this guy at the top here has said, we don't want to be associated with this at all. Pull the legs from under us. I put a thing up on social media straight away. I was like, well, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm sorry, we promised you all this new site that we're meant to be starting next week. I said, we've got equipment due in from China in the port. It's due in a week. We've got nowhere to put it. Like, we really need some help. I don't know where we stand legally. Like, can they even do this? Like, I've served my time. Like,
presumably you've sunk a shit ton of money into this project.
We're ready to go, yeah.
We've to fall at the last hurdle.
We've got hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equipment arriving in like 6-7 days and nowhere to put it. No storage, no nothing. Like, what are we going to do? And I put a cry for help out. And I was like, is this even legal? Can anybody help? Like, what can we do? And I put it up and it got even worse. I got an email 3 days after putting that post up from the freight forwarder that we used to import the goods. He said, Nick, your containers have been seized by customs. He said, they've been randomly seized, by the way. I said, randomly? I said, yeah. He said, all 4 of them? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, sorry. He said, 1 in every 1,000 is meant to be pulled aside for random search. I said, okay, so all 4 of mine out of the tens of thousands have been pulled. So, yeah, they have, yeah. I said, you know what? I said, I don't care. Because in my head at the time, I'm like, I've got nowhere to put these goods. I've got nowhere to store them. So if they're going to hold on to them and search them, you're doing me a favor because I've got nowhere to put it right now. It gives me some time to buy a building. I'm like, let them search. Let them check every square centimeter. I don't care. I've got nothing to hide. So I'm like, okay, we bought us some time. Right, we look for another building. And as it transpires over the weeks that follow, of course, they found nothing. They ripped all of our containers to pieces. They x-rayed everything. They dipped our rubber dumbbells in acid to boil the rubber off. They sawn equipment in half, sawn the dumbbell in half, which you've seen, clean in half. So they destroyed our equipment, kept it for 3 weeks, did untold damages to everything. And I was like, wow, this is horrific. We're going to get it back now, though, at least. Okay, now you owe us £24,000 for the search.
What?
I'm sorry? Yeah, there's a £24,000 bill. You have to pay for the x-ray, you have to pay for the handling, you have to pay for the storage, etc. And I'm like, you've took my goods aside to search and found nothing. Of course you found nothing. And now you want me to pay £24,000 for that same search? Yeah. And we're not going to give you your goods unless you pay the £24,000. And if you don't, we'll auction your equipment off and get the £24,000 out of that. And I'm like, if you raid a house, a residential house, on poor information, and you boot someone's door off and you damage their house and you trash it completely, do you then say to them, oh, you now need to pay us tens of thousands or we're taking your house? Or do you say, we fucked up, we'll pay for the damages? But no, £24,000, here's the bill, you have to pay it or you're not getting your equipment back. And I had no choice. We had to pay the £24,000. And I have an email from the freight forwarder who'd worked in that game for over 20 years. He said, Nick, and I've shared this email on my social media. He said, Nick, I've worked in this game for 20 years. We deal with tens of thousands of containers every month. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career. And life's carried on like that since. And we've gone from strength to strength with the businesses. I've spent a lot of time going back and forth to China. Like, our business model now is such that we're building commercial grade gyms to a higher spec than almost anybody for a fraction of what it's costing everybody else, because we've spent so much time back and forth to China. Every single material that we use is Chinese. Everything is Chinese. And we get it 300, 400, 500% cheaper than what it costs in the UK, and the quality is twice as good.
Wow.
And we've done that with everything. Every single thing that you see in the gym, the lights, the flooring, the vending machines, the sunbeds, the toilet partitions, the glass that you see in the windows, like absolutely everything that you see is from China. And the quality is just substantially better and it's so much cheaper. But we had to do that because we've never really had much money. So we were like, what can we do? Okay, well, and it took a lot of trial and error, but we're in a really strong place now. And, you know, we've pushed and we pushed and we pushed, and then we opened Gym 4. And when we opened Gym 4, I signed the lease. We agreed to go in. It's on an industrial estate, a big industrial estate. It's been there for probably near a century. Sign it. Didn't have much parking on site, but I signed it. And within a week of announcing that we were opening there, we just started the build. The entire industrial estate gets covered in double yellow lines for as far as the eye could see. Across entrances, everything, like it'd been done in the middle of the night. Like for as far as the eye could see. And when we seen it, we contacted the local mayor. He was due to do our opening a couple of months down the line. He's like, I'll check for you. So we checked, come back. He said, nobody in the council can tell me how these have gone down. Nobody. There's no record. Like, they've gone across entrances and everything. So it's clearly been done in a rush. We get to opening day and the mayor cuts the ribbon and we've got him on tape and he's like, I'm going to get rid of these double yellows. He's like, ignore them. They shouldn't be there. It's been an error. I'm going to get rid of them. They're absolutely ridiculous. Skip forward 3 weeks. Oh yeah, they were put down in error, but the council have now said that they want to enforce them. So they put a chokehold on that business. They started sending parking inspectors out at 9 o'clock at night, up to as late as 9 o'clock. This is the middle of nowhere, by the way. It's an industrial estate in the middle of nowhere. Lost about 40% of the business in that one particular site.
Wow.
And 3 weeks after the site opened, the Daily Star ran with an article. And the headline reads, police thought they'd nabbed major cartel kingpin, followed by my name, etc., etc., mentions guns, whatever else. So just after these double yellows had gone down, just after we opened this site, my whole world collapsed within the space of 7 days. I had two or three personal bank accounts closed with 24 hours notice. I had 4 business accounts closed with 24 hours notice. I had the company that collects the direct debits for our gym, so they collect like thousands of members of payments every month on our behalf, and then they pay it to us. They emailed me and said, in 24 hours, your account's cancelled. We're going to refund every single member that you've got, give them all their money back. I'm not giving you anything, 24 hours. So we can't collect membership money. And even if we could, we can't put it into a bank account. Like, we're going to go bankrupt. We've still got to pay the landlord. We've still got to pay rent. We've got tens of thousands in bills for each site every month. You've got wages, you've got rent. We've still got to pay the government their sales tax and everything else. Like we're fucked. What are we going to do? In the same week, my insurance contacted me car insurance. Your policy's now void. We've become aware that you've got a conviction. I said, I've got no driving convictions on my record whatsoever. Oh no, not a driving conviction, a criminal conviction. I said, yeah, that was a very long time ago. And what relevance has that got to my driving license? Oh, well, statistically, if you've been to prison, you're more likely to have a car accident. I said, well, can you cite the study that's from, please? Like, can you give me some data as to how you've worked it out? No, we're not obligated to give you that, sorry. If you want to stay with us now, your policy is going to jump up to £10,400 per year. So like 7-8x. I'm sorry, what? So all this happens in that same week. I had to put another sob story on social media. This is what's happened. Like, I'm just trying to do good. Like, I'm just trying to do better with myself. And no matter what happens, I'm just getting shut down left, right, and center. And a couple of big business heads had seen my post, and they do business with Go Cardless, who's the direct debit collections company who shut me down. They do big business with them and send a lot of work through them, and they put leverage on them on my behalf and said, if you do this to this man, then we're going to pull all our business as well, because what you're doing should be criminal. And they ended up reversing and letting us keep it in the end. Banks wouldn't. So I had to take the business out of my name. I had to take the directorship out of my name to this day. I can't own the business. I can't direct the business. Like, I am locked out from the normal world no matter what. No matter how much good I do in the world now, because there is media reports of my crime, I'll be stapled like that forever. I'll be painted with that brush for the rest of my life. So I will never be able to legally run a business. I can't own shares in the business. I can't do it. Because even when I step down as director first, I'm no longer directing the company. Oh, but you own the majority shares. So technically the director works for you. So still no.
And still the question remains of who you upset. And I want us to jump ahead and wrap up here on this. There's so much we can cover, but most important of all, what are your plans for the future? What are you going to do from here?
I have one goal left. And this is probably I'll start with the negative. I'll lead into the positive. So the negative is that I've very much given up on my hopes and dreams of being able to have a positive impact on the world directly. I don't think they're ever going to allow me to be in a position to do that. I just don't. And it has, some resentment has grown, but I have no regrets. That's the main thing. I have no regrets whatsoever. My plan now is, and as I see it, the country's fallen to bits. And all I have left to do, the only goal that I have left in life, is to finish building the ark that I'm building and keep my people on it and watch the rest of the world. Just what will be, will be. And through what we're doing with the businesses now, like my team and I, there's near 20 of us, and we are inseparable. Like, loyalty is the only thing that matters throughout all of us, and we've stayed true to those parkour beliefs. We brand ourselves Lost Boys, as in Peter Pan Lost Boys. I'm covered in Peter Pan tattoos. Like, the idea of rebuilding Neverland for my people is what keeps me going now, because I have no monetary goal left. Like, I could 2x, 3x, 4x my net worth now, nothing to change. Nothing to change at all. Like, money's never been a big driver for me anyway, but even less so now. Like, I can do what I want when I want. So there's no reason to acquire more unless it's to help the people around me. And our plan now is just to bring everybody else up to the level that I'm on now, to have financial freedom to do what you want when you want. And we're in a position to do that and probably complete that in the next 2 years. And that is, we have external investments in our projects now. So we have external individuals who see the potential in what we do, and they put their money in and they essentially fund what we're continuing to do. And what I said to the guys after we built Site 4, we hired a castle out in the far north, Appleby Castle. Because I was like, guys, the business model really works here. Like, we're onto something, and we really need to get organized and make a battle plan. And where else more suitable to make a battle plan than a castle? So I hired a castle out in the far north, and we had we're in this like really cool setting in this castle, big long dining table, like fitted the theme perfectly. I said to the guys, I said, listen, I said, the equipment company that I deal with in China is that they've offered me an exclusivity contract for the UK. So we'd have full scope of the UK. Anyone wants to buy anything, they come through us. I said, not only have we got that, you know, we've got this pipeline to China where we can bring everything in at a fraction of what everyone else is paying, and we can build fast to a very high spec. We have the business model, we can copy and paste. Like, everything is done internally with us. Like, we have a core team of maybe 4 or 5 people, and it should be, in any normal business, that would be 30, 40.
Yeah.
We all have 5, 6 roles each. But that's how we like to run it. And I'm like, look, we have the business model proven. We make a lot of money. I said, if I can bring external investment to the table, which we can with a proper business plan, I said, we could offer them a small percentage to the company and a return back on the money that they put in, as well as the equity stake. I said, then effectively, I get the rest of the business for nothing. I said, so for example, if an investor comes along and they put in so much into the business and we say, right, we'll pay you that back over 5 years, we'll give you 10% interest on top of that. But as well as that, we'll give you 10% equity stake in the business. I said, if that covers the whole build, covers the whole business, I've got 90% of that site and it's cost me zero. It cost me absolutely nothing for another multi-million-pound business. I said, and the only reason I'm here today in this position to even be like this is because of every man sat at this table. When I had nothing, when they were closing me down left, right and center, when I had no money, you boys were there, you worked for free. You did the late nights, the late weeks, the late months. Like, we did this together. I'm in this position now where I've got more money than I could spend. And that's because of you guys. And I've reacquired the most important thing that you can get in life, and that's time. And I can do what I want when I want with my time. And I want that for every person sat at this table. And I said, you know, not everyone will choose not to work. Some people will continue to, but the important thing for me is everybody gets a passive income and has the choice to work. I said, because I don't want to see myself or my people go through the same struggles that my family have gone through for years, work until they're 70, die at 73. Like, I don't want that for anybody here. I said, we're onto something really special here. I said, so in that scenario, we bring the investor in, we'll put this plan together while we're at this castle for these few days, phones down, and we are going to map out this business plan hard. I said, and if we get a bite, I said, 90% mine for nothing. I said, I'll keep 40 odd, 50%. I said, the other 40, 50%, I said, I'll divvy up between you all for nothing, for zero. And you'll have your passive income, and we'll start to the man right to me here, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. And then there'll be the next site. We start the next man in line and we go round. And by the time we come back to the first man again, okay, well, now you're on 20%, 20%. I said, all of this rests on everybody having faith in me and in each other. I said, because not everyone's going to get a seat at the table immediately. It's just not possible. I said, but all of this fully relies on your faith in me, that if you're next in line, you're next in line. And faith in the person to the left of you, in that if they've just had their shot, they're not going to forget about you. They know that you're next in line. I said, and all this falls back to everything that I learned in the parkour days. If we're trying to scale a wall that is too big to scale on your own, if it's 20, 25 feet, then you stack on a man's shoulders and you lift the man to the top, but you're having complete faith in that man that gets to the top is going to pull you up, because he could leave you at the bottom. But if you get man 1 up, if you've got man 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and if 2 to 5 help number 1 get to that ledge and he's up, there is complete reliance there on number 1 then reaching down and pulling next man up and next man up, and complete reliance on 1 to 4 not leaving 5 down there on his own. Because you could leave the man behind. You could then split the pie between 4 instead of 5. But having complete faith in each other and complete faith in me, I said, we do this and you'll have your percentage of the businesses. I said, you get your passive income every month. I said, with the contacts that we've now got in China, I've got plans drawn up for what looks like a mini mansion, a set of mini mansions that I can build utilizing the contacts that I've got in China and Romania for about $500,000, be worth about 2 million each. I said, once everybody gets their stake in their businesses, that's cost me nothing, that's cost you nothing. You've then got your passive income coming in every month. You then qualify for a mortgage. You then get a mortgage on the land that we buy. We build your houses using the contacts from China and Romania. You now have a £2 million house and a £500,000 mortgage on passive income, where you've still got spare every month, and the other chunk goes towards your mortgage. It's cost you nothing. You're now a multi-millionaire. Every single person sat at this table, all 20 of you, we do it and it costs us nothing, but it all rests on every single one of us doing it together and knowing that there's a process, and the process requires all of us to do it together. And sometimes you're going to have to do more than the man on your left, less than the man on your right, but just faith in the process that we have to do this as a team. That is my Noah's Ark. That is the only goal that I have left in this world. I've been everywhere I want to go. I've done everything that I want to do. I've met everyone that I want to meet. The only thing that I want to do now, the only thing left to do that really means anything to me is to finish building my ark, so that I know that whatever happens with the direction of this country, and it doesn't look great at the moment, that my people are looked after. We have the private house in the state. We are there together. We can look out for each other. Like that's the legacy that I leave behind now. Not COVID, nothing else that I've done. Just being able to build the ark for my people. And for someone who's non-religious, that might sound like a silly statement to me, but this is me building my ark. So that is the only thing that I have left to do. And I think by the end of 2027, early 28, there is almost no reason why, if we just don't keep following this process, we are there and everybody is set. We're aboard that ark and it's game over.
From a council estate with the continued story and struggle with finding that group of people and holding on to them, it feels like a good ending. And I hope this time you really do get to run off into the sunset. But that piece on faith is so beautiful, that everyone has to have faith in each other in a non-religious way. You've seen the angel in the marble and it looks like you're carving to set it free. So I admire you. Hats off to you. Thank you so much for sitting down for this conversation, and we'll have to do a part 2 once you've built your arc in 2027, 2028. So Nick, where can people find more of your work?
Just my Instagram, Nick Capo, 2 underscores. It's about as exciting as it gets, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to another one when we finish the arc, which we will.